Haji, welcome to all, and Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, te Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. At this time, we are, I'm conducting a space live as well as I have a live stream, which is on Twitter. Sorry, at this time, we are conducting a live Twitter space as well as I have a live stream, which is on Twitter. So you are welcome to join the Twitter space if you have some questions to ask. While simultaneously, you can also watch my live stream on Twitter and YouTube, which is going on simultaneously at this time. If any one of you can't hear me properly, especially on the live stream or on the space, let me know. Hopefully, there are no audio issues as I go through this very, very important topic of discussion today. Today's format will be the topic, as we said, is I I'm going to just show you guys like I'm going to make a presentation on Air India 182 bombing. And we're going to talk about, who did this bombing, how this bombing was actually executed, what all evidence we have, what all sequence of events we have. So I want to pump in as much information out and evidence out to the public as possible, because there's a lot of disinformation that is being spread by some motivated governments, some motivated government agencies to disinform and misinform the public about this terrible, terrible terrorist attack on the Canadian soil. Once I make the presentation, I will share all the evidence. We'll open it up for questions, Q&A, discussions. I welcome all kind of evidence, all kind of tough questions. If you have some extra evidence, please put it up. If you agree with something, you are most welcome. If you disagree with something, please critically examine all this evidence and ask questions, because we all want to make sure that the truth regarding this bombing comes out. Um, all the evidence I will share will have its references, so you can go and check it on your own. This is publicly available information, but unfortunately, because the information is so vast, people don't have time to collate and understand it. So what I have tried to do is kind of look at all the inquiries, court cases that have gone up and kind of collate the relevant points and show that in a condensed form to you guys. There'll be a lot to consume, but hopefully you guys can follow me. So the Air India 182 was an aircraft which was bombed, in which 329 passengers were killed on June of 23rd, 1985. The aircraft took off from Canada and was en route to India via London. And it kind of came down somewhere short of the Irish airspace. Everybody knew. When I say everybody knew, I don't mean the public, but all the investigating agencies knew. The congressmen in US, the senators, the media, everybody was aware who was the main conspirator of this bombing. But Due to political and diplomatic reasons, public was kept in dark, and nobody has done enough good work on actually collating that evidence and showing it out to the public. So the title of my presentation, if you are watching on live stream, there's a PPT I'm presenting. It says why everyone knew who did it, but no one was meaningfully published. And actually, no one was punished. Like, we knew all these conspirators. Who are these people? Who are the agencies? Which are the governments which are involved? No one was meaningfully convicted and punished for this terrible, terrible terrorist attack. And you will learn in today's presentation why that happened. Okay. And if you guys are on Twitter Space, you can follow my. You can at the same time also look at the presentation I'm making on live stream. I think you guys can listen to me. See, you can dial into both. I don't know. Maybe you're not on the same phone, but maybe if you're using a desktop, you can do both. So this is the first presentation that you see. I've kind of shown the route of the aircraft. This was a aircraft which supposedly came down through a bomb, took off from Vancouver. There was a flight which was a different aircraft, CP Airways, on which a bomb-laden suitcase was put up. And the bomb-laden suitcase traveled on that aircraft from Vancouver to Toronto. And Toronto, that bomb-laden baggage was put into the Air India Flight 182. The Air India Flight 182 then from one airport in Toronto went to another airport in Toronto, and from there it started flying towards London, and just short of Irish airspace it vanished from the radars, and 329 people died. Around 260 bodies were recovered. Hats off to all those rescuers who kind of risked all their life limb to kind of recover those bodies. A terrible, terrible tragedy. And this happened on June of 23, early morning hours, almost like the midnight of June of 22nd and 23, depending upon which time of the time zone you are on which longitude you are on. So this is the fateful flight 182. But this was not the only flight which had a bomb. There was another flight which took off from Vancouver, another CP Airways flight which went from Vancouver to Tokyo, and on that also there was a bomb-laden suitcase put up on the same day, and that bomb-laden suitcase blew up while it was on tarmac, and it killed two baggage handlers. So there were two bombings done, one on 182, which brought down 329 people, and one which actually exploded on the tarmac, only killing two baggage handlers. And one is called the Tokyo bomb, the other is called the Kanishka bomb, Air India 182. So let's move on, to slide number 3. So when I say, everybody knew who did it, like, why I'm saying that? I'm saying that because almost every main CSIS investigator, CSIS is the Canadian Intelligence Agency, who was involved in the investigation, who actually investigated this, RCMP officers who actually were involved in the investigation, they came out and wrote books or articles or leaked information to major newspapers explicitly stating who was behind this bombing, how it was done, etc., etc. So the information is out in the public, and these names are also not even secret. Initially, many of these CC agents uh, were came as confidential sources to newspapers, so they said, "Hey, don't reveal my name, but this is what it is." But later on, they even came out publicly, so we know their names and we know their faces. And but still, no justice was ever delivered, and we learned today why that happened and how that happened. So the first slide that you see is I've taken an excerpt from a book written by Juno Karsua. He is the Asia Pacific Bureau Chief for CSIS, the Canadian Intelligence Agencies. And he wrote a full chapter on Air India 182. And I've given an excerpt of that chapter. And let me read it out for you. Okay. He's telling out in open words who did it. He said, flight, and I'm quoting him from the book. This is his page, and you guys can go and get this book if you are interested in a really good book, especially if you're a Canadian. So he says, quote, Flight 182 isn't just a tragedy. It is also a Pandora's box with the leaden weight of Canada's entire governmental apparatus still sitting on the lid and trying to keep it shut. Concealed inside, apart from the murderers, is the dark history of India itself, in the form of steely-eyed agents bent on settling New Delhi's accounts and prepared to cross anybody's borders in order to do so. How would Canadians feel if it were known that India's agents provocateurs had pulled just one tiny thread in making this disaster come about, or at best had known that it was going to happen and chosen to stand aside? What might Canadians do if they discovered that our authorities had tolerated foreign interference that was bound to spill quantities of blood for no other reason than to ensure the continued prosperity of corporate interests and the untroubled afternoon teas of our diplomats? So he basically says India did it, and we never brought out the truth because of our trade relations and diplomatic relationships with India. And he's not the only one. Okay, there you will see what all other CC agents are saying. Okay, here I have put, like, if you are watching my live stream, I'm showing some of the cuttings from the newspaper reports that came out immediately after the bombing as investigators investigated it. India's hand, the Indian spy agency's hand, were all over this bombing, and the investigators obviously started leaking that information out to different newspapers. Here is one from Branson Sun, another from Globe and Mail, and I'm just reading the headings. Okay, and you can read the whole article if you want to. And I have actually all this data in a public folder. I'm going to share the link after this presentation. You guys can go and check these. There's a flight 182 sleuths suspected India. Spy confesses to the bomb plan. Indian counter-terror tailed. Air India inquiry takes 007 turn with talk of rogue secret agents. And in this, they basically say, hey, this was Indian government who conducted this, masterminded this bombing, and they masterminded this bombing for plain and simple reason. They wanted to discredit the Sikh community and the Sikh freedom struggle, which was going on at that point in time in India, where the Sikhs were kind of, agitating against the Indian government and asking for, separation and an independent country of their own. And they thought of this wonderful, beautiful plan, like, sorry for using these words, that why don't let's just bomb an aircraft using some foot Sikhs as foot soldiers, and then basically all the blame will basically go on those Sikhs, and then we can say, hey, this is a terrorist movement. And then in the international community, all the sympathy and support that was there at that point in time for the Sikh struggle will die down. So these are the newspaper clippings. You guys can you don't even need this data. You can go and Google the newspaper clippings. If we have access to newspaper archives from 1985 to 1988, you will see what all newspapers were reporting, and they were directly quoting RCMP and CSIS investigators. These were not newspapers speculating; they were quoting the sources that they had within the investigation agencies. Okay, this is and then I'm going to specific quotes that they provided. One of the major, organizations or news agencies which was in the forefront of, ripping open the evidence around this was Globe and Mail and Toronto Stars. These are the two highest selling dailies in Toronto, in Canada, and they published multiple large. There were 3-part series and there was a 5-part series where they outlined the entire conspiracy of how Indian agencies masterminded it, which foot soldiers they used within the local Sikh community, etc., etc. And then eventually they also published a book. The book was published in 1988. It is called Soft Target: How Indian Agencies Pulled Off the Largest Terror Attack in Canadian Soil, in which they basically quoted 2 CSIS investigators who were part of that investigation. And it is some of those. It's a must-read book for anybody who wants to understand how this attack was done. They have pieced together every single piece. Basically, the investigators have come out and told you the entire conspiracy, how it happened. So in that book in 1988, I have given you some quotes, okay, and they talk about the masterminds. So basically in that book, those CC officials claimed that India did it. The Indian consulates in Toronto and in Vancouver were the masterminds. They also named the officials who were involved. That they hired some local Sikh foot soldiers who were already on their payrolls to basically get the bombs on board, or the suitcases on board the aircraft, and kind of planned, masterminded the whole conspiracy. And I'm quoting from that official, and quote: "So convinced had CSIS become of the Government of India connection that at one Air India task force meeting, a CSIS agent had seriously suggested that, quote, if you really want to clear the incidents quickly, take vans down to the Indian High Commission and the consulates in Toronto and Vancouver, load up everybody and take them down for questioning. We know it and they know it. They are involved." One quote, and another quote from a CSIS person: At about the time the RCMP was making, and this is available. I'm kind of also showing my slide. I'm reading from a slide. There's that exact quote that I have excerpted from that book, and it says, at about the time the RCMP was making its November arrest, two senior CSIS officials in BC described at a CC meeting their version of a criminal flowchart on Sikh violence in Canada. At the very top, they placed the Government of India, and in brackets besides it, the Secret Service Bureau, CBI, R, and AW. These are, India's spy agencies. Third agency was the agency that India specifically created to defame the Sikhs. Below Government of India were the names of Indian agents of influence and agent provocateurs. Below these were the supporters of the Babbar Khalsa, many of them suspects in the two bombings. CC's agents believed that the RCMP task force was setting its sights too low in the investigation. So basically, the CC, which is the Canadian Intelligence Agency, they describe, like they had unraveled the conspiracy, and the top was Government of India. But like they also pointed out that unfortunately, the RCMP, which is actually the arm which will actually bring out the case in the court, the police was setting its eyes only on the foot soldiers and was not very much interested in who the masterminds were, which CCs knew is Government of India and its agents. And you guys can follow this as I'm making the PPT. You guys can see the my live stream with the. If you are interested in looking at the PPT, you can watch the PPT later on as well. But I'm going to quote from there. Okay, another direct quote from a CSIS official. Okay, and he says that the CSIS forbade its operatives to contact Indian agents. It had concluded that the intelligence agents were more of a threat to Canadian security than a helping hand to Canada's domestic spy service. And then there's a direct quote from a CSIS officer who was investigated. He said, if I was having coffee in a room with a Mountie and a raw agent walked in, I would get up and leave the room. Okay, then I also show you a leaked memo. This is a memo which was written by Gary Bass, who was the head of the RCMP task force on Kanishka bombing. This memo was actually, it's kind of quite telling, in which he's telling his own officials, hey, don't explore this evidence because the Indian government's hand will come out, we'll be stuck. We don't want to spoil our diplomatic relationships with India, blah, blah, blah. So I'm just reading, and this is a secret memo, but it got leaked and it was never disputed. It was actually confirmed in John Major inquiry that this is the actual authentic memo. So I'm just quoting from the memo. It's point 1 and point 2. Some serious concerns regarding possible involved. Okay, I'm just missing one part. Just hold on. Let me. Possible involvement government, possible Indian government involvement, which at trial may come up, which at trial may permit the defense to explore very deeply into what the RCMP and CSIS know on this issue. As I understand, this is an area CSIS and our government will not wish to get into, as it may severely impact relations with India. There is a very real possibility that one or more of the targets we propose to wiretap are Government of India or raw agents or informants for them. The implications here are obvious. So there were like memos going around trying to kind of bury the Indian hand, which is now available in public. Okay, now if you're seeing on my slide, this is actually a speech. Because this evidence came out in 1988, and the newspaper were a talk about CC investigators. The CC was leaking like a sieve, and they were like pumping out information about that how they are under pressure to actually not blame India, and that we know they did it. So eventually, there's actually a congressman in U.S. House. His name is Andrew Town. He stood up, not one, there are multiple congressmen actually who gave these speeches, but his speech is the most poignant of all. And I took his speech. It is available in congressional records. You can Google it. He gave this speech on October 31st, 2000, wherein the topic, the headline is, the real culprit in Air India bombing is Indian government. And he laid out, why he thinks so, why Indian government was the one behind it. And then not only this, he, along with 21 other congressmen, signed a letter after this speech urging US government to declare India a terrorist state. All is in records. You guys can Google it. You can see that letter as well. So as I said, everybody knew it. So why was nobody published? To understand that, let's first understand the sequence of event, because this is such a long, extended saga. There are couple of two court cases plus one inquiry, and then multiple news reports, and all the buzz in the media. It's very difficult for a common person to understand what exactly is the sequence of event and what happened when. And what is happening is, many people who want to disinform the public, they know that public is not going to piece together all this timeline and documents, so they use that ignorance of the public to disinform people like Terry Miluski from CBC, who is like one of the biggest, I would say, disinformation spreaders on Kanishka bombing, because he just works overtime to hide all the key facts and just selectively show some facts to kind of hide the hand of Indian agency and Indian government involvement in this. So I have tried to piece together. If you guys are seeing my screen, I have given the timeline of events. So it is very important to understand. So the things did not start in June 1985. Things started in June 1984 with Operation Blue Star, when Indian government was attacking the highest, piece of pilgrimage for the Sikhs. At that time, just around that time, the Indian government gave a $2 million loan to the main accused of Air India bombing. The main accused of Air India bombing, the financier, was Ripu Daman Malik, and he got all his money actually from government of India. So in the 1 year before the bombing, he was given $2 million credit line by a Indian government bank operating out of Vancouver. It's called State Bank of India. And there's no justification why this $2 million was given to a small time cloth shop owner. Like, his shop was even not a cloth shop. He was just having a shop which used to sell small trinkets, like a hand to mouth trader who would buy some cheap bangles in India and come to US and sell them. His shop was probably not more than $50,000 at that point in time, which he mortgaged as a security for a $2 million loan, as if he's like a big industrialist. And all that money, immediately after he got the loan, Ripu Daman Malik became the biggest financer of the most openly violent Sikh organizations, who said that we are going to conduct, acts of violence in India for freedom struggle. And the name of that organization was Babbar Khalsa. And Ripu Daman Malik was the main financer of Babbar Khalsa, and information known publicly. And then he was given $2 million credit line. And he openly, supported Babbar Khalsa. And so this happened in June 84. And then you see June 1985, when the bombing happened, just before the day the aircraft was supposed to take off, there were everybody on that in flight which was connected to government of India, like a high official of government of India, refused to board that aircraft. Is that a coincidence? Okay, now I'll give you name few people. The Consul General of India, Surinder Malik, who is then CC official, called him one of the main masterminds. Okay, he along with wife and kids were supposed to board. He didn't board the aircraft. Siddhartha Singh, he is the Ministry of North American Affairs in the government of India. He was supposed to board the aircraft. He didn't board the aircraft. No reason ever given. The fast friend of Surinder Malik, a Toronto car dealer, a big businessman, he was supposed to board with his family. He didn't board. No reason was given. Ujjal Dosanjh, who later became the Attorney General of BC, and also under whose tenure the whole case was bungled, he also refused to board the aircraft. He also was supposed to go with his family, and he was also a fast friend of Surinder Malik. So all these people refused to board. And if it's a coincidence, I'll let you guys judge it. Okay, and so that happened. But the aircraft on June 1985, as I said, the aircraft got bombed. It came down on just short of Irish space. And then in November 1986, and June 1985 that happened. In November 1985, Parmar is arrested first time. Talvinder Parmar, that name you will hear multiple times. But he is not charged for the bombing. He is charged for something like owning some explosive substances, which he tried to blast in some, forest. And even that was not proven, because that's not a crime. You can buy, gunpowder and try to create a blast. And so he had to be let go, he was held for a short period of time. And then in November of 1986, the Canadian government loses the biggest pipeline contract that it was in negotiation with India for. At that point in time, around $2 billion pipeline, for which a Canadian company was the number one in race. They lose that contract, and days after they lose the contract, Canada expels en masse all the top four diplomats and their entire staff, everybody who reported to them, en masse in 1986. India did not retaliate by even expelling a single Canadian official. No explanation was ever given why India did not retaliate, and why these were sent off, like why en masse. It was apparent, that the Canadian government knew that these all guys were involved. So at the minimum they could do was just send them back. This happened in 1986. Okay, now by 1988, all the CC agents, as I said, and RCMP agents who were investigated were fed off with the Canadian government and politicians burying Indian hands. So they came out and started spilling beans to the newspaper. And in 1988, as I said, a very important book was published called Soft Target, in which the CC agents provided and rolled out the entire conspiracy. That, okay, who were the main financiers, who were the foot soldiers that they used, and they named Malik as the main financer of the entire operation. They named Bagdi, Rayat, Hardyal Jol, Balwant Bhandir as the main kind of what you call accomplices. And they said Talvinder Parmar is going to be was the scapegoat to be used. And so they laid out everything in that book in 1988, okay, that this is the evidence. Still, the Canadian government didn't arrest these people, because the moment you arrest these people, then again the Indian government name will come out. From 1988 till 2001, none of these people were charged, even charged, and they roamed around freely. And only one person was charged, and I'll talk about it. So this came in 1988. So this is another landmark event where all the evidence was actually exposed to the public. 1991, Inderjeet Rayat, one of the persons who was named in that book, was actually charged for manslaughter. Okay, manslaughter. Charged for manslaughter for which flight? Not Air India 182, for Tokyo bomb. And that charge also was not the work of the Canadian investigators. He had to be charged because the Tokyo investigators did such a thorough job. The Japanese, unfortunately for these guys, the Indian government, they used a Japanese transistor in which they put all the bomb stuff. The Japanese transistor, the Tokyo investigators pieced together which company made those transistors, which batch went to where, and for which batch it belonged to. And on this day, from this shop in Vancouver, BC, these 9 transistors were there, out of which 1 was sold. So they basically gave this level of information to Canada. And when the Canadian investigators went to the shop owner said, yeah, on that day from that batch, I only sold 1. And this is the gentleman who bought it, which was Inderjeet Singh Rayat. And so they were forced to charge Inderjeet Singh Rayat because the Japanese investigators did such a thorough work. Otherwise, they wouldn't have even charged Rayat. And they charged Rayat under such a flimsy charge. Okay, the charge for Rayat was they couldn't that he was not part of the conspiracy. The charge for Rayat was that he bought a transistor, then a tape, and another timer, which he gave to another person. That person was never traced, and another person. And that person, somehow that transistor became of the bomb. And Inderjeet Rayat obviously have no role to play in it. You have to read that judgment to see that, how so Inderjeet Rayat is convicted for unintentional killing in 1991, not as part of conspiracy, and he's given 10 years. Okay, this is 1991. Now 1992, while there is evidence against these people, Malik, Bagdi, Rayat, in public, Canadian government doesn't arrest them. Indian government keeps saying, oh, Malik is innocent. There is this guy Parmar who is the main guy. You should arrest him. Canadian government said we have no evidence against Parmar. But what happens in 1992 was Parmar goes back to India via Pakistan and starts his freedom struggle there. And he gets captured in 1992 in Punjab. And India, which has been claiming that Parmar is the mastermind, does not call in RCMP for interrogation. What they do is they kill this guy in custody in 1992. Okay, so Parmar is tortured and killed by Indians in custody. Now, when they had this whole opportunity to actually get this guy and make him confess in front of the entire world, they don't do that. They basically kill him. Okay, so you can see what's going on here, right? So 1992, Parmar is captured in India and killed. Now comes 1993. 1993, Malik, the main financier of Babbar Khalsa, who has got all his money from India, against whom all the major newspapers in Canada have leveled a charge that he is the main financer, he was the main propagator, he did all the financing of the bombing. He is invited by India to India for 1 year. He stays in India for 1 year. He maintains a lavish business office in India. All the stuff that he is bringing to sell in Canada as part of his business is coming from India. And all this while, Malik is the Babbar Khalsa funder in Canada. So you see, like this bizarre thing which is going on. And Malik stays in India for 1 year. Nobody knows what he was doing there for 1 year in 1993. Height of militancy in India, in Punjab. And there is this accused roaming around in India like a state guest. So in 1996, what happens is another landmark things happen. Many members of the community who knew Malik, Ripudaman Malik, and Bagdi and Rayat, they start coming out and spill the beans that how Malik actually also approached them to take some suitcases on the aircraft. There was one lady who had a platonic, apparently it is claimed she had a platonic relationship with Malik, and used to work. She was the main what you say teacher in the school that Malik ran, and Caucasian lady, but she said she's in deep platonic loving relationship with the Malik. And then she came out and told like that Malik in some weak moments confessed to her multiple times how he actually got the bags on the aircraft and how he was the one who was financing the entire operation, and how he used Parmar for what and other people for what. And she was not the only witness who came out. There were 4 other witnesses who came out, and each witness's evidence corroborated the other witnesses' claim. None of them were conflicting, okay? So there were total 5 witnesses, which were first-hand witnesses, who basically claimed Malik told this to us. They came out. Now, RCMP had no choice but to charge these people. All this evidence was already there with RCMP because Globe and Mail and have published it. So in 2001, these Malik, Bagdi, and Rayat are finally charged. The first trial, the first charge for Air India 182 bombing happens 16 years after the bombing and 13 years after all the evidence is already out in the public. Because Globe and Mail has published a book. They have written multiple part series. Even then, it takes 13 years for Canada to charge them. And that's too because 5 witnesses came out on their own. It was not the investigative work of RCMP. There was some investigative work by CSIS, but RCMP was, totally in the pockets of Malik, as Malik boasted once. Anyways, so Malik, Bagdi, and Rayat are charged. Mr. Rayat actually makes a plea deal. And again, Mr. Rayat is given a manslaughter charge. Okay, now Mr. Rayat says, oh, when I bought that transistor, I didn't bought one, I bought 2 transistors. Okay, and I gave that person who took the transistor, I gave him 2. So I didn't know what he did with the transistor. So, I don't know whether he was going to make a bomb. So he was charged for manslaughter, unintentional killing. He made a plea deal. He was given 5 years, like a joke. And other 2 people, Malik and Bagdi, against whom there were multiple witnesses, both of them, in spite of that mountain of evidence, and I'll show you some of the evidence which was against Malik presented in the court, they basically got out scot-free. They were acquitted to the shock of everyone. The judge basically found one silly reason or the other silly reason to kind of acquit these people out point blank. So in 2001, the trial starts. 2005, the trial, when everybody is thinking, oh, this evidence has come out, the judge makes ridiculous reasoning and acquits everybody. And once he acquits everybody, there is an outcry in 2000, especially the Sikh organization, the WSO, the World Sikh Organization, played a pivotal role. They were the ones who basically raised the matter the most, that this acquittal is not done. The Crown should appeal the verdict, that it is a case, it's a close and shut case. But the government of Canada refuses to appeal the case to basically safeguard their relationships with India. So what they do is they say, oh, we'll set up a public inquiry. So they agree to set up a public inquiry that is called the John Major Commission. But, lo behold, would you believe me, the farce they committed in the John Major inquiry? In the terms of reference of the John Major inquiry, they said The John Major inquiry's terms of reference will only be to investigate the lapses at the airport security and the issues of coordination between CCs and RCMP. They are not supposed to fix the responsibility of the bombing or to look at the any evidence that is regarding Indian government's involvement in the bombing. They were specifically forbidden. So that was it was a hogwash, and I'll show you, in evidence in future. So this happens, this inquiry comes out, which is again like it's a no starter to begin with, because you've told the inquiry you are not to fix the responsibility and to tell what the conspiracy was, who was involved. Their only job is to look at airport security lapses, fix those, and the coordination issues which happened with CC and RCMP. That's it. Okay, so this hogwash happens. Obviously, John Major inquiry does nothing, and then in 2019, and the matter is buried. The families of the victims are paid millions of dollars in compensation and made to sign a gag order that they are not going to talk about Air India 182 outside and blame the government or that government for this. The amount of that compensation is not revealed. That how many was paid. I have one report where one reporter claimed it was roughly around 1.5 to $2 million per victim, but it's kind of unsubstantiated because it didn't provide any evidence. Anyways, so now this case is kind of buried under this inquiry, but there's a very funny thing happens. Okay, in all this, Ian Josephson, the guy, the judge who acquitted everybody, he assesses all the evidence and says, "Oh no, this evidence is wrong against Malik. Malik is this witness is wrong." He just inserts a line in the judgment without any evidence. There's no evidence in the entire judgment of any evidences, and he says it appears that Talvinder Parmar was the mastermind. Okay, and Talvinder Parmar we agree that Talvinder Parmar was the mastermind. Okay, if Talvinder Parmar was the mastermind, then you knew that what is the conspiracy, that there's a mastermind and there's some foot soldiers. Who were the other people involved in that? Not a single word. He acquits everyone, writes one line without any substantiated evidence against a person who is not even charged, and that's it. And then the media, like Terry Malusky and all these guys, they just take the focus away from the main accused like Malik and Bagdi and Riyadh, and they just say, "Hey, Parmar, and Parmar was it, and all Parmar is dead, so the case is closed for them." So this is what happened. And then in 2019, another thing happens. Curious thing: Malik, who is on no-fly list, he is actually taken off the no-fly list on pressure of the government of India, and he goes to India as a state guest. And it's a highly publicized visit to India. Malik, the main accused of Air India 182 bombing, is actually received by the Home Minister, by the RAW chief, etc., and publicized as this bridge who is going to bridge the gap between the Sikh diaspora and the Indian government. Malik comes back from that visit, and then in 2022, Malik is mysteriously assassinated. And on the day that he's assassinated, now the reports have come out, he was in constant touch with another official of Indian government, R&AW officer, who was posted as an IFS officer. His name is Amarjeet Singh IFS. He is very active on Twitter. So the investigation have revealed that on the hours before he was killed, he spoke multiple times, almost at a frantic pace, with this guy Amarjeet Singh IFS. And this is where the things stand in terms of a timeline, if you see. So going to the next one, this is the criminal flow chart. Okay, now I'll tell you how it was done. Like, how did they actually execute this? Okay, so this was a criminal flow chart that CCS had. On the top, as I show, is the government of India. The agencies which actually executed this is R&AW, which is the external intelligence agency of Indian government. Intelligence Bureau, which is a domestic intelligence agency of Indian government. Actually, IB is the most powerful among all the intelligence agencies that Indian government has. And there was a third new agency they had created, which was called Third Agency. This was actually created to fight the Sikh freedom struggle and all that stuff. So their main people who were masterminds who worked for these agencies, one is Surinder Malik, the Indian Consul General in Ottawa, and then another guy called Devinder Singh Ahluwalia. He was also posted. He was an R&AW officer. He was also posted there. Where are these two people now today? Nobody knows. Okay, after they finished, they were expelled. Nobody in the world today knows where are these two individuals. They were never to be seen here again, heard again. I know people who tried to locate them, but nobody has ever been able to tell their location. They just vanished. And then below them was Ripudaman Malik, who was the main, I would say you can call him the executioner. Like he was the main financer and the organizer of the entire operation. And Ripudaman Malik's accomplices, like people he used, these were the people which there was enough evidence that Ripudaman Malik was their basically bread giver. Ripudaman Malik financed their houses, their businesses, gave them money. So they basically worked for Ripudaman Malik. Those were Bagdi, Indrajit Rayat, Hardyal Jol, Balwant Bhandeir. Balwant Bhandeir was like kind of a gangster guy who used to kind of work, and his son is actually a prominent gangster today in Surrey. And so these were the foot soldiers. You can call them the foot soldiers. Talvinder Parmar was also one of the foot soldiers, but he was basically the scapegoat. He was the one to be blamed. So that, we can say, oh, because Talvinder Parmar was the face of Babar Khalsa. So he was to be eventually blamed as the guy who did the bombing. And Talvinder Parmar, if you see his videos, he doesn't come out to be a particularly intelligent person. So he was easy to be kind of, thrown under the bus. So this is how that, the whole chart worked. And I'll show you the evidence why I'm saying Ripudaman Malik, the financer, and Indian agencies were the planners. So I have one more slide, which I will not go into, but this is how the bombs actually, we don't have time today, but we'll discuss it maybe in the discussion. This is how the bombs were actually past the security and went across multiple airports, across two different aircraft, how the X-ray machine mysteriously broke down, how the dog's card went missing, how the security officer of Air India basically allowed that bag to get onto the aircraft, how he basically misled the security staff there. There are n number of things that happened, very interesting things, how otherwise it was not possible for the bomb to travel without the passenger, without the active intervention by the Air India security officer, who was the main guy who got everything orchestrated at the airport. We'll talk about that later. So now I'll show you like this guy Malik, Ripudaman Malik, who was the main accused in the Air India 182 trial. And I'll just show you the evidence that was against him. And you guys make up your view, okay? If this evidence is not sufficient to convict somebody, I don't know what evidence is sufficient. I have no clue what other evidence can be sufficient to, to convict somebody. So, so as I said, the main witness against Ripudaman Malik was his, platonic lover with whom he had a deep loving relationship, as he characterized it. Her identity was hidden. She was called Miss D in the entire court case. And I'm going to read this evidence from exactly the excerpts are from the court case. They are on the slide, people who can see it. But so there's one conversation that happened in which this is called the Kudale confession. So there was a girl in Malik's school who had tried committing suicide. Malik was very upset about that issue. And then he comes home to meet Miss D, and he's discussing that suicide attempt by the girl. And in that fit of anger on that issue, he talks about Kanishka bombing. And this is that whole discussion is called Kudale confession. And here she says, Miss D testified that the conversation then turned to issues surrounding the attempted suicide. She testified that during this discussion, Mr. Malik stated, if one child dies for Sikhism, so what? Others will learn not to break the rule. We will not be bending our rule for anyone. Mr. Malik then looked at her and said, 1982, 328 people died. What did anyone do? People still remember Khalistan. When Miss D did not respond, he said, you know what I mean. He continued, you were in it, and then it's blanked out. And she responded with this thing which is blanked out. Mr. Malik then said, we had Air India crashed, and nobody can do anything. It's all for Sikhism. Kudale won't get anywhere. Ministry won't listen. No one will. Miss D testified that Mr. Malik was calm but very serious during this conversation. He pointed his index finger at her and stated, I am like a Hindu god and I have a chakra on my finger. I rotate everything and everyone follows. And then this talks about Miss D basically got very upset, and then she wrote this whole thing on a journal. She had a habit of writing a journal, and that journal, it was not just her testimony. That journal, what she wrote on that day, was also available as evidence in the court. Okay, imagine that. And then there's another testimony from Miss D. Miss D testified that about a 24-hour religious program she had attended with Malik in May 1997. During a discussion with him about who was in attendance, she mentioned that Mr. B was not present. There's a talk about Mr. B. Mr. Malik told her that Mr. B had not attended because he was mad at Mr. Malik, explaining that they had a falling out over $240K, and that he had once asked Mr. Malik to take a suitcase on a plane for him. When she asked what was going to be in the suitcase, Mr. Malik replied that it was a device that he wanted to send on the Air India plane he was going on. Okay, now this Mr. B, that she said that Malik told that he tried to ask Mr. B to take the device. Mr. B was also available. Okay, Mr. B also came out and testified that yes, this thing happened. And Malik asked me to take this suitcase for 40,000 or whatever dollars. I needed money, but I refused. So this is Mr. B's testimony. Mr. B testified that he had a conversation with Mr. Malik in early 1985 when he approached him to avoid a foreclosure on his home. Mr. Malik responded that he would assist him if he did a job for him. Okay, unfortunately, my this thing is this. Let me see if I can remove this stuff here. There is this. Okay, just one sec. When I'm going on that, there's a logo on top of my slide which is hindering my I can't read the whole thing, so I can go to the actual slide and I'll show you that. Okay, anyways, we can try to remove. I don't know how to remove the stuff, but let's see. Okay. Okay. So Mr. B testified that he had a conversation with Mr. Malik in early 1985 when he approached him to avoid his foreclosure. Mr. Malik responded that he would assist him if he did a job for him, and this is to teach India, the government of India, a lesson. And Mr. B replied that and a job for him, which is to take a suitcase on an aircraft to London. And Mr. B replied that he feared being jailed in India as he the baptized Sikh. Mr. Malik responded that Mr. B would stay in England and that man will pick up the luggage and he doesn't have to worry. Mr. Malik indicated that he would take care of the travel arrangement and then he'll also pay him some extra money. And if something happens, he will take care of his family. And this is all for the panth. Mr. B said that he basically went to his home, discussed with his wife, and called Malik back and said, "Hey, I got the money which I needed from someplace else. I don't need the money. Thank you very much." And then Mr. B said that he learned of the Air India explosion on June 23rd, 1985. And the moment it got bombed, he immediately knew this is the same bomb that Malik was asking him to take on the aircraft. And then Mr. B testified that he received a threatening telephone call the same evening from an unknown male who referred to him as blah 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 and stated the work was done, don't open your mouth. He further testified that Mr. Malik had also called him later that evening and told him the mishappening with Air India had taken place. If anyone asks you about the conversation we had, you should let him know and don't talk about it. Okay, so this is Mr. B. Then Mr. Malik had not only approached Mr. B, he also approached another Mr. A. Okay, so Mr. A also came for testimony. So Mr. A, and this is Mr. A's testimony. Mr. A drove to the Ross Street Temple by himself that Sunday morning. This is the day when Mr. A said the conversation happened. Hundreds of people were coming and going when he arrived at approximately 10 a.m. Mr. A was immediately called over by Mr. Malik, who was standing at a stall located outside the main entrance of the temple. Mr. Malik took him over to a fence by the side and, becoming serious, stated, and this is what Malik stated to him: "The government of India has attacked Harmandir Sahib. We are to take revenge of that. You are to drop the Apache case at the airport. There is a time bomb in that. When the plane will go, the plane will be destroyed with that. You are not to go with that. You are just to load them at the airport." And Mr. A said, I told him that many innocent people will be killed. What is their fault? And and etc. So then this guy, and then there's another witness who came, Narinder Gill. This gentleman was not afraid to actually take his name in open. He was probably a bit more courageous. And he also gave testimony that this guy, Malik, came to his house and then he was having a conversation with certain people in the other room. Then he came in an angry mood to the garage and said, "Oh, they want me to crash the aircraft. They want me to bomb the plane." And Mr. Narinder Gill said basically he suspected that Malik was trying to test him to see if I am going to help him in the process. Narinder Gill's testimony against Malik. Okay. Now, this is how the aircraft, the bombs were bags were transported onto the aircraft. This is Miss D's testimony, where she said this is what Malik told her. Mr. Malik explained, this is Miss D telling that how Mr. Malik explained that each person had been assigned a task and that he had been generally responsible for overseeing them. He told her that he had booked two airline tickets at the downtown office of Canadian Airlines. The first ticket he booked was for a flight from Vancouver to India with connections in Japan and Bangkok. He then booked a second flight from Vancouver to India with a connection in Montreal. He told her that there had been an issue with the second ticket going from a smaller to a larger airport, so he had called back to change the connection, etc. And this is exactly what happened. Um, then Mr. Malik told Miss D that Hardyal Jol was a hardworking man. Okay, so the phone number from which the tickets were booked, which called the ticket counter, that was actually traced back to one gentleman. I won't call him gentleman, one person named Hardyal Johal, who was another known of Malik. Okay, he was never charged in this case, surprisingly. While the phone call came from his house, why he was not charged, I have no clue. So here, Miss D said, this is what Malik told Miss D. Miss Malik told Miss D that Hardyal Jol was a hardworking man who did a lot of running around and was part of the group that delivered the suitcases to the airport. He had run around the airport encouraging any Sikhs he saw not to board the plane. Mr. Malik also told her that Mr. Bagdi Balwant Pander and another male had gone with Hardyal Jol to the airport with the suitcases. That Balwant Pander had driven to the airport in his brown van and that the delivery had been really good. Okay. So, and believe me, guys, what I have shared with you from that court case is just a tip of the iceberg. The amount of evidence that was against Malik was mountain of evidence. Okay, I'm just sharing like the tip of the iceberg, but you guys can go and read that whole judgment yourself. So the question is, if there was so much evidence, why were they acquitted? And why was there no appeal when the Crown had such a, a close and shut case? Why, these all three people were let go? And and there's a disinformer Terry wants you to believe no, Rayat was convicted, but he is lying. Rayat was convicted of manslaughter, not of being a conspirator. It's a sea of difference. Manslaughter is somebody was planning a bomb. Let us say I have like a mouse here. Somebody was planning a bomb. He needed a mouse. He came to my house, took the mouse, and later on 300 people died. Now I got unintentionally involved in a killing, but I was not part of the conspiracy. So that is manslaughter. Yes. So this is what Rayat was convicted of. So does that mean and only given 5 years? Like, what is 5 years for killing, 329 people? So everybody was acquitted. Like Bagdi, Ria, Malik, they all got off scot free. The level of lawyers that were available to defend Malik and Bagdi, like nobody can even dream of. It was 9+ lawyers, the tea cream of the cream in Vancouver bar, were defending them. Okay, and who was paying them? Obviously, Indian government, as you guys can judge. Okay. So, why was there no appeal? So there was a huge outcry, as I said, and out of that outcry, the Crown didn't appeal. What they did was they said, "Oh, we are going to do a John Major inquiry. So we're going to take this retired Supreme Court judge, and he's going to basically figure out the truth for you guys." But it was a hogwash. It was a smoke and mirror operation. And why I call it a hogwash? Here it is. If you are watching this. So what happened was when the inquiry started, WSO, World Sikh Organization, many Sikh Jathebandis, they were relieved that, oh, finally we have an inquiry. So they approached John Major Commission that, hey, we have all these whistleblowers. There are CC's agents. There are, newspaper reporters. There are witnesses who want to come out and talk, give you all the information, and let's call them. So they asked for, calling the CC's agents who were whistleblowers to Global Mail. They called for Gary, the boss who was basically the RCMP head, whose memo was leaked, Gary Bass. They called for attendance, that Air India security officer who was there. Let's go summon him, ask him how he got the bomb. It's too loud, all the things on the aircraft. But John Major refused to call all these people. All these people are willing to give evidence, except that security officer. But John Major refused to hear them. You know why? This is his written reply. and I'm reading it from you, and you guys can see the slide on my live stream. This is his written reply to World Sikh Organization. Why John Major is saying I am disinterested in listening to any evidence. So this is what he says. I'm going to read here. There are two paragraphs. I'm going to read the first paragraph and the second paragraph in the clincher. The first paragraph says a review of the terms of reference of this commission of inquiry reveals that the investigation of the bombing of Air India Flight 182 is intended to serve as a backdrop and reference point for issues as to the degree of cooperation demonstrated between the departments and agencies of the Government of Canada, including RCMP and CSIS. The investigation is also intended to present a reference point for the issue of transforming security intelligence into evidence. Now is the clincher. None of the terms of reference calls for an inquiry into the issue of who was responsible for the bombing of Flight 182, nor of the role, if any, of the Government of India, nor of the thoroughness of the investigation of any such role by the RCMP and or CSIS. Should I read this again? Like, what is this inquiry for? Somebody will ask. So I'll read this again, okay? Just hear out the words. He is saying none of the terms of reference calls for an inquiry into the issue of who was responsible for the bombing of Flight 182, nor of the role, if any, of the Government of India, nor of the thoroughness of the investigation of any such role by RCMP and OCCs. So what is this inquiry? If not a hogwash? It's basically to fool the people. And people like Terry Malusky have been employed now to, basically convince people that we've had a great inquiry. Oh, we have closed this case. Justice has been delivered. All bull crap, because the inquiry was a non-starter. Okay, so actually this inquiry was appropriately called out by another CSIS investigator who was part of the investigation. His name is Francois Lovigne. So this is his excerpt, okay? This is actually on CBC. He was asked this question. And I'm reading, and it is also on my screen. So he was asked, could it happen again? And this is his response, okay? It isn't so much as when, says former Canadian CSIS officer Francois Lovigne, who was part of the original investigation after bomb exploded. So it's not as much, so much if as when. So he's saying it's not a question of if, it is just a question of when India will redo this such an act, because we never held India accountable. So Francois Lovigne, I'm quoting from the newspaper item, a respected intelligence analyst, says the major commission into the 1985 Air India bombing suffered from the fatal flaw of not being allowed to investigate the role of Indian government in the attack. So that's he's saying in polite words. So this is how, all the evidence was there, as I said, and there's a lot more evidence. I didn't want to bore you guys by just a monologue. So I try to just piece together certain things. We can go into the details. So justice has been done till now. Justice has raided. Why we need justice, right? So surprisingly, all the people who died, they were 80% of them were Canadian citizens, but all of them were brown skin. Okay, so they were from Indian origin. So God knows whether they were looked upon as real Canadian citizens by the Canadian system or not. I asked the question, and it's the real tragedy. One of the ladies, when the aircraft fell, so the autopsy kind of revealed that there was a couple of people who were still living. One of them was a 6-month old pregnant lady. Okay, and she and her child both lived, okay, for around 9 minutes. So that is, so they need justice. So that is what we are here for. So we have a lot more slides as well, like how the tickets were booked, tickets were picked up, baggage check, and like I have all the references here in these slides. Anybody who's interested, they can take this presentation from me. I have a full folder of all the evidence of Air India bombing, and how it was done. You can take that folder. I'll share that link as well. So with that, I'll conclude the presentation, and I'll ask people to come up for any questions. They can ask me questions on the live stream, or you can also come on the Twitter space, and we can discuss, and ask questions, and we can piece more into how this was actually done. So if anybody needs a speaker, they can request it. And please retweet the space if you can, even the live stream. I would. So if there are people there, I see a lot of people are actually logged into the live stream, and I just want to let people in the live stream know that there's a space also which is live, and you guys can, if you want to ask me a question on live stream, you can post a question through the chat option. If you want to talk to me, um, then you can actually, actually click. I put it in the chat. I have given the link to my Twitter space, and I will give respond to the live stream as well. You can actually come to the Twitter space and then take a speaker and then ask me a question. Okay. Yeah, I would request a coin is here. Let me see if coin is able to join. Yeah, let's ask questions. And if you want, there's a lot there in those inquiry commissions. If you actually piece through it, intelligently. And okay, just lay out. How I'll talk a bit about how the Indian government has used some paid media for hiding the truth in their hand, in spite of all this evidence being there. As I said, the biggest perpetrator of disinformation uh, is has been, the tool has been some sold out retired journalist. Terry Miluski, ex CBC, is one of them. He has tweeted the most amount of disinformation, falsehood, and lies about Air India 182. And his trick is basically he will pick up one isolated piece of information and take it and exaggerate it while hiding the main evidence. So his trick of spreading disinformation on Air India 182 is he will constantly say, "Oh, you see, there was this guy, Talwinder Singh Parmar. He's the main accused. He's the main conspirator, and Sikhs are celebrating him." But he will never tell you that in reality, the main accused was Ripu Daman Malik, the guy who India facilitated, the guy who, and he was funded all the money by the Indian agencies. And this guy had deep relationship with Indian agencies. And there were CC's agents and CC's investigations, which he named this guy. He will never tell you the truth, but he will pick up one person's name, the scapegoat's name, the foot soldier's name, and say, "Oh, this Talwinder Singh Parmar, look, Sikhs are putting up his posters on the Gurdwara." Why it is normal? Because Talwinder Singh Parmar was not ever charged in any Canadian court. And when he went to, only India was saying he's the guy who bombed. And he went to India. India, rather than investigating him, rather than getting all the evidence out, killed that guy. So, are we to say the guy who was never convicted and who was actually murdered by a state illegally, we are going to blame him and call him a culprit without a fair trial and due process? Only, sold out idiot can make such an argument, which, Terry Miluski is. And because those guys are really trying, they are trying hard to kind of, hide the real, footprints of the real masterminds. It's very sad, very sad, that a government is killing its own citizens to do what? To defame another group of its own citizens. Not maybe its own citizens, maybe diaspora more. But, so it's kind of, imagine the irony in all this. There's a question that Hangry Can Man has asked. He's saying, is there an effort to have the Air India bombing case reopened? Yes. And the Indian, as I said, the Sikh organizations in Canada have been demanding it from day one that we need to reinvestigate this issue, really get the culprits punished. And it is my assessment based upon the facts I have seen in public. Maybe there is actually a link between killing of even Sardar Hardeep Singh Nijjar with Air India, because he was one of the main campaigners for asking for a true investigation into this. Hardeep Singh Nijjar, who was again killed by Indian government, he was organizing big marches. He was planning to actually organize a march, I am told, for Air India reinvestigation, and he gets killed. And then I recently heard RCMP chief gave a statement. Yesterday it came out, and it was a very hearty and very welcome statement. He gave that speech at the memorial service of Air India 182 victims, that the investigation is still open and ongoing. This is the first time RCMP has said it, because till now they've been trying to bury it deep under the wraps. So seems something has changed. Whether it is Trudeau who has now, changed the government of Canada's policy, is worth seeing. But something is cooking up on Air India 182, and I think the Canadian government is finally going to come out with the truth. And this is the least we can do for the victims and their families. The world should know the names. If not, if they can't be punished, that is one thing, but the world should know their names. Who are these guys who masterminded it? We know it, and that's why I spent almost 6 months reading every single, not every single newspaper, but almost all major newspapers of the time, reading the two court cases and their judgments. The two court cases, as I said, was the Tokyo court case and the Air India 182 court case, and the John Major Inquiry Commission report. There was also another inquiry commission that happened in India, Justice Karpal Commission. That was a bit of a hogwash as well. But there's always, if you read the witness testimonies and cross examination, some good piece of information comes out. So actually, in Justice Karpal Commission, I found out how come the bag traveled without the passenger. It's impossible. So in Justice Kirpal Commission, the Air India officer is asked the question, "Do you have a baggage?" Not the RCMP officer is asked a question by a Indian liar, that did Air India have a baggage to passenger reconciliation system in place? And the RCMP officer says yes. Air India was the only flying airline in the entire Toronto airport which had a baggage passenger to baggage reconciliation system, which was of the highest standard for that time. In spite of that, they allowed a bag on there. And we can talk about how the security officer, the Air India security officer, the mysterious John D'Souza, an ex-military guy, who was flown into on that day from New York just for one day, how he actually allowed the aircraft to be loaded with the bomb laden bag, and how he worked over time to make sure that the bags are not searched, the bags are not sniffed. And when the bomb laden bag had actually set off the scanner, the PDF handheld scanner, he was the one who intervened and allowed that particular bag through. That was the blatant amount of what you say, the blatant way in which they did it, and all that is data is available. Nobody just, the fact that nobody's talking about it because it's brown people who got killed, and brown people don't have voices, and the voices that they have, the so-called liberal Indian elite, they are more interested in actually safeguarding the Indian government hand rather than exposing it. It's a travesty. Just one sec, I have this Puchangi while I kind of handle him. So due to this, this sad thing, and I have I Kayanan. He's my, I think, Tamil friend. Um, Kayan, if you can take the mic, that'll be awesome. It'll be good to have a bit of a discussion. And due to this fact that all this evidence is available, but the Indian intelligentsia, the Indian so-called elite, people who are well read, they don't want to read the truth. They are more interested in just hearing the lies of Terry Malusky, who will basically just share selected information so they can keep living this fake news item that, oh, the India had nothing to do with it. There was some Sikhs who basically bombed an aircraft. But the reality is very different, and the evidence is out, and I've shown it, some of it, to you guys. And I encourage all of you guys to actually go and uh, investigate this on your own. And I'm also going to share a public folder with you guys. I have it on a Google Drive which I made public. Let me share the link to that folder with you guys. uh, I have taken the screenshots of all the evidence and saved it there. You guys are welcome to go there and kind of check it. But hold on, let me just do some more security checks on it. I don't want anybody like the Indian agents to kind of leave some virus there which impacts anyone. So I'm going to just make it read only and share that link maybe sometime after this presentation is over. Okay, I invite questions. Would be great if people can come on and ask some questions and have a discussion. Jazz Tiger is here, and I would love to see some, Canadians uh, who And this is the tragedy because, like, it's a brown people killing brown people. So many patriotic Canadians, otherwise, who will keep talking about inflation half day long, they are not interested in talking about the biggest terror attack on Canadian soil. That's a tragedy. I'm the last person to kind of say accuse Canada and American systems of racism. But if there is ever an example of systemic racism, this bombing is one, because everybody in the Canadian system knew. Imagine the tragedy. Okay, it was Canadian citizens who died. 80% of them were Canadian citizens. But when the aircraft went down, okay, who should get the sympathy of the world? Whom will you call and say, "Hey, we are sorry this happened to your citizens"? You will do that to the Canadian Prime Minister. But what happened? The Canadian Prime Minister called the Indian Prime Minister, expressing solidarity and sympathy. It should have been the Indian Prime Minister calling the Canadian Prime Minister that your citizens died. I feel so sorry. But here's the other thing that happened. So that tells you, how these two countries and their systems have looked at people within their own system. And that is the kind of a tragedy. And it is okay. Terry Milewski, he is a sold out journalist. By that age, these people have no morality left. No, most of their life they are taking money to write articles and to do news items for somebody or the other. That is how the media works. Unfortunately, it is worse than the profession of, people say, flesh trade. But that's okay. He is what he is. I call him the lowest scum on earth. But what about the so-called patriots, like all these deshbhaks who keep taking the Indian chadda all day long? Like, should they not have some shame? Like, should they not question their government? Or are you so emboldened to your government that in spite of knowing the evidence, you still want to blame another community rather than your government who actually masterminded all this? If you're a real patriot, if you're a real, but you are not a patriot, these guys are nationalists, they are not patriots. So they will keep blaming, keep towing the line of their government. Look, government is no, like sanctity that you have to basically even justify the murder of your own fellow citizens just because it served some quote unquote national cause, which was what the national cause was, to defame another group of community, which is amazing. Anyways, anybody wants to take a speaker? I would love to have a quick discussion on this if possible. We'll give it a couple of minutes while some speakers come in. Uh, Jayapalji, you can take a speaker if you can. Sukhman is here. And Gurinder is here. Okay.
Hi, Ajit Paji.
Haji, Haji. Sat Sri Akal, Sat Sri Akal.
So, one interesting aspect is that, Talvinder, as you said, right, Talvinder Singh Parmar, right, was killed in police station in Punjab, right? And that was the golden ticket for India to actually try him, bring him to court, tell the whole world that how he did it. But instead of that, they just killed him in the police station. So that shows they wanted Talvinder's mouth to remain shut. And another interesting aspect is that CSIS, right? They had wiretaped Talvinder, and they had all the conversations that Talvinder was having outside. He was having with people and whatnot, but they destroyed all the tapes. So was it like CSIS was also told to protect somebody and
Okay.
destroy all this evidence?
Yeah. I'll talk about those tapes. Okay. No. So I think CSIS was probably the most honest organization in this entire thing, and they had enough evidence. You have to understand, CSIS is an intelligence organization. It is not a evidence gathering organization. Okay, it is basically like intelligence says. Suppose I am a guy who's planning something wrong, and I'm calling you and saying, "Hey, let's bomb X and Y," and you are able to wiretap my phone. Now you have intelligence that Harjeet is trying to do something wrong, and Harjeet is involved in a plot to bomb an aircraft. That does not mean that tape recorded conversation you have is good enough evidence to convict me. Now, to take this intelligence and convert it into evidence is the job of RCMP. to take me to a court of law and get it punished. Now, those so-called tapes are a red herring. They are used to browbeat on CC. So what happened in this entire investigation was CCs will have intelligence and they will figure out, oh, this Indian government is there, and they will pass on this intelligence to RCMP. And RCMP was under the pressure of external affairs, specifically a minister called Joe Clark, and they will bungle it or they will not basically act on that intelligence. So there are conflicts that develop between CCs and RCMP. And then RCMP basically, like the Indian government then use some media elements to kind of, target CCs as well. So this whole talk about tapes and CCs destroying tapes is one of that cases. And I'll tell you what those tapes were. So CCs, Talvinder Parmar was a known person who he had openly stated, I'm going to fight India and I'm going to go India and launch a struggle in India against the Indian government using violent means. So he was obviously, being followed by CCs all the time. So 1 year before the bombing, he was already on CC radar. So there was a guy who would always follow Talvinder Parmar, and his calls will be recorded, and there are hours and hours of his calls records which are there. But CC's act at that point in time did not allow CC to keep a recording with them unless it is converted into evidence by a specific time period of time. So the practice was, it was not an odd thing that they did. The practice was the Canadian law required that they had to destroy the tapes, but they can keep the transcript. So when you prescribe the transcript, so those tapes were destroyed, but all the transcripts of those tapes were available. But this whole thing was, CC had destroyed tapes. CC had destroyed nothing. CC did what it was supposed to do as per the policy at that point in time. The transcripts were available, and those transcripts proved nothing that Parmar was, doing something on this. Parmar was just a scapegoat. And so this whole thing about CC destroying tape is basically the disinformation spreaders who use that as an excuse to put the blame on CCs, which was probably the only Canadian organization who was basically, trying to do the right thing, in my view.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. And one more question, right? Who was the PM of Canada that time? Was it Stephen Harper?
No, at the time of bombing, just before the bombing, I think it was Trudeau's father. But 1985, I'm not sure who was the prime minister. I can Google it right now. Brian Mulroney.
Okay, conservative, if you know.
Conservative.
Yeah, that explains too.
Yeah, could be. Yeah, no, I won't go to that extent. I think Joe Clark. Who was Joe Clark? Let us see. Joe Clark, was he conservative? He was the main guy. He was the main guy who basically put extreme pressure on RCMP, and he was probably on the rolls of of Indian government directly, and because the way he acted to kind of bury all the evidence against the Indian government, and he was the main guy. Let me see, and he was also the prime minister. Okay, from 79 to 80. Okay, he won in Progressive Conservative Party, and then he was also, I think, conservative most of the time. Yeah, and it was a Conservative Party which was in power, and he was that could be good link that you are kind of linking between Conservative Party of Canada and the Indian government, because even right now the Indian government agents, if you see their media, they are hopeful that next election Conservatives will come in power, and all this talk about India doing foreign interference will go away with Conservative Party winning. So maybe they have a hold, they have a control of Conservative Party that we are not aware of.
And Stephen Harper, right? He's still having conversations with Indian counterparts despite what everything happened. So,
Yeah.
The Conservative Party is catching it just like.
Yeah, that's very sad. Actually, conservatives are supposed. Like, I'm a libertarian. I'm more close to the conservative, element, and the conservatives are supposed to be more patriotic and national security oriented. But it seems in Canada it has flipped. The Liberal Party is showing more patriotism and doing the right thing versus the Conservatives. and the conservatives in Canada seem to have been kind of being pocketed by some of these Indian elements.
Yeah, conservatives need to clean up their house. They have people like Dipya Dilwari. She's openly anti-Sikh. Then this person, Shivale Majumdar. If you go to his previous tweets, openly anti-Sikh. Chandra Arya is there. He's from Liberal Party, but again, like he needs to be controlled too. But conservative seems to have like more elements, and they're not coming clean
Yeah.
on what they would do with all this India business.
Yeah, just the role, as I said, like in 19, when I was talking about the role of Conservative Party in Joe Clark, Joe Clark was the Minister of External Affairs, and he was the one who was pressurizing RCMP not to investigate India. And not only that, there is evidence that he was almost kind of anti-Sikh to a degree, and yeah, and eventually they lost the pipeline deal. What the maximum they did was expel India's diplomats. But I think it's a huge mistake Canada did by burying Indian hand, because I think it has come back to haunt them now with the Indian interference kind of going to a degree where they have death squads kind of manning. The streets within Canada. They're pumping in criminal elements through the illegal immigration route. Uh, I was reading a statistics, and let me bring that up if I can. The number of illegals which have entered India, sorry, America through the Mexico border. The highest number of people who have entered illegally are actually uh, the. Let me pull that picture up if I can. Let me. This is the. Let me build this up. Upload a file. And I think you guys will like this. Okay, let me just. I will just share it like this. Share screen. Share screen window. Okay, entire screen. Okay. Okay. Can you guys see this on the live stream? If people are watching, you will see I'm showing like a graph. It's a graph of number of Indian immigrants attempting to enter United States illegally. These are the people who were caught. These are not the there's not the number of people who actually crossed. It's just the number of people who were caught. Look at this graph. In 2014, the number was hardly like like 400, 500 people in a year, or 200 people. In 2013, it was negligible. Steadily that number has been going up, and in 2017 to 19 it is touching almost 10,000. 20 it is going to 20,000. 21 it went to 30,000. 22 it went to 65,000 people were caught, and in 2023 around 100,000 illegal Indians were caught, like not just crossing, were caught. Now assuming in 2023 1 in 10 were caught, okay, so we are talking about a million people have entered US illegally, just Indians, in 1 year. And imagine if like we took like last 2 3 years, there are roughly more than 2 million illegal Indians who have entered US. And we know, looking, hearing the mainstream, the vernacular media in India, which unfortunately our fellow patriots who speak English only can't understand, they are openly claiming that, hey, we are sending all these people to US and Canada to basically sabotage their economies, their political system. We'll become big vote banks. We will enter criminal elements there so they can go and kill anybody who speaks against our government. It's kind of a super Marxist idea that they have of infiltrating and taking on the Western civilization from within. And there is this one individual. His name is Gaurav Arya. He's an ex-military and considered like the spokesperson, unofficial spokesperson of the Prime Minister of India, who has been claiming on his YouTube channel for last 3 4 years that yes, we are entering these criminal elements into Canada, into US, and we will kill anybody there who is going to speak against India, and we'll control US from within, blah blah blah, and whatnot. So it's kind of very surprising. And when I look at these numbers, uh, I don't know if you, anybody of you is watching this. Like, let me put put this on the space as well. To me, it is scary. I see like us, Canada, having allowed India the pass and not holding India accountable for this terror act has created now a bigger national security threat for Canada, where now India is emboldened to to do even further acts. And I can tell you, their list of people they want to kill is not limited to people with this name Singh behind their name. Okay, now that list is going to extend, and I think Conservative Party should understand, if they don't take a stand for the Canadian flag soon, it will be their kids who might be on that list that India has. So,
So Gaurav Arya, right? He also mentioned in his videos that Indian government will pay the Conservative Party, and Conservative Party will come into election, will win and make and create the power in Canada, and then they deal with all that. Not only that, right? He also created a video about this hitman thing, that Indian government should hire this hitman in Canada, in UK and US, and kill all these Khalistanis, and that is what actually Indian government did. But what he says is not just open threats, but it also I think reveals the policy of the Indian government.
yeah, I think it is a policy. You are right. And they're openly stating it, like this gentleman, maybe we shouldn't call him a gentleman, but this person named Gaurav, he's known as to be the unofficial spokesperson of the Prime Minister himself. He meets the Prime Minister, he takes his briefing from the Prime Minister. If he's saying something, that is the government of India's official policy. And I was pleasantly surprised when ABC News, Avani Das, from ABC in Australian, they did this very good documentary, and she basically provides the video clips of this guy. Because if you want to understand what is the policy of Indian government, you don't have to listen to the Ministry of External Affairs. Okay, they are just lies. You have to listen to what Gaurav Arya is saying. You have to listen to these YouTubers which have direct access to the Prime Minister. What are they saying? That's where the real policy is coming from. And I'm just okay. While we are talking, I think Terry Malusky just tweeted something. Can somebody tag Terry Malusky? Like, I invite him. I've been asking him to come to my space. He's the so-called expert, but he just runs away with the tail between his legs. He's not willing to come and debate all this evidence that he has of that Indian government is innocent, and Indian government has nothing to do, he says, with this bombing. And he went on to the extent of defending Malik. Okay, he was saying, "Oh, Malik is a good man." Like, I was like, what? After all this evidence, right? He's calling Malik a good man. Okay, and as per him, there's nothing to see. There's only one guy, and one guy alone, Talvinder Singh Parmar. One guy who suddenly, arranged everything, and mysteriously he one day also became a clean-shaven guy who loaded the bags on the aircraft. He was that one guy who was at 10 places at one time, and he was the mastermind. So if he was the mastermind, that means you know what the conspiracy is. So if it is the conspiracy, who are the foot soldiers? Where are they? Why have they been not caught? You know the mastermind, but you don't know the foot soldiers. You know the conspiracy, but you don't know who all were involved. It's just a very ridiculous argument that this guy is making without any evidence. And you see, he will rarely share, direct reference or quote. And I'm seeing some tweets. It'll be great if you can. Let's tag him. Let me tag him while we're talking. Let's see if he has the courage and the gumption. Eh?
I already did it.
You did it? Okay. Let's.
Yeah, look at the comments. I told him to join. But he's a liar, and he's a very dishonest person to his profession. He recently wrote a book on Khalistan thing, and I was in a conversation with him. I said, Terry, it's good that you've written a book, and you're supposed to be an expert on Khalistan. Can you please tell me how many times have you been to Punjab to talk to people? Because those are the people demanding Khalistan. He said, I have been only once or twice to Khalistan. And I said, how many times to Punjab? And I said, how much time you spent there? He said, I was part of a Stephen Harper official visit. And I spent 24 hours in Punjab. That's the only time we have spent as part of Stephen Harper's official visit to India. So can you imagine how much time he got to talk to real people, or to talk to Punjabis, or to understand Punjab's problems? And this guy is such an idiot, right? And I was telling him about Talvinder Parmar being killed in custody, Punjab police, in the jail. And he was like, no, there was a gunfire and all. I said, you have no idea about Punjab police. What are you talking about? So, I mean, the worst part is these guys are dishonest. He's dishonest at the core.
Yeah.
That is painful.
Okay, we're going to do an experiment. Okay, let's see if Terry has the balls to join. And even if he doesn't have the ball to join, I am seeing he has just tweeted certain tweets. So I'm going to live debunk these tweets. No preparation. Okay, his tweets are coming live. I'm going to live debunk them. With there are 800 people on watching me on live stream. I'm going to show his tweets on screen. I'm going to debunk them, showing you the right references. I don't know what he's tweeting. Okay. So let's do that experiment. Let's see what Terry Molluski has got. Okay. And while I'm there is some Mr. Singh who has joined. And I'm on. Mr. Singh ji, कौन हो तुसी?
ਮੇਰਾ ਨਾਮ ਪਵਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਹੈ ਜੀ, ਮੈਂ ਵਰਜੀਨੀਆ ਤੋਂ ਜੁਆਇਨ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੋਇਆ ਹੈ।
ਅੱਛਾ ਅੱਛਾ, ਆਵਾਜ਼ ਸੁਣੀ ਲੱਗਦੀ ਆ। ਪਵਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ ਵੈਲਕਮ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜੁਆਇਨ ਕੀਤਾ। ਤੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਨਹੀਂ ਪਤਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਿੰਨਾ ਦੇਖ ਪਾਏ ਪ੍ਰੈਜੈਂਟੇਸ਼ਨ। ਵਰ ਯੂ ਏਬਲ ਟੂ ਵਾਚ ਸਮ ਬਿਟ ਆਫ ਇਟ?
ਨਹੀਂ ਜੀ, ਐਕਚੁਅਲੀ ਮੈਂ ਸਿਰਫ ਜਦੋਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਟੈਰੀ ਮਲੂਸਕੀ ਦੇ ਟਵੀਟ ਤੋਂ ਗੱਲ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ ਨਾ, ਮੈਂ ਉੱਥੋਂ ਹੀ ਆ ਕੇ ਜੁਆਇਨ ਕੀਤਾ। ਮੈਂ ਟੈਕਸਟ ਮੈਸੇਜ ਹੀ ਲੇਟ ਦੇਖਿਆ, ਸੋ ਮੈਂ ਜਦੋਂ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਉਦੋਂ ਮੈਂ ਜੁਆਇਨ ਕੀਤਾ ਕਿ ਚਲੋ ਦੇਖੀਏ ਸਿੰਘ ਲੱਗੇ ਨੇ ਕੀ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ।
Okay, that's fine. You are most welcome, and please ask some questions on it, if you get time. But let me do an experiment. Let me take you guys to Terry Molluski's live tweets. Let's debunk his live tweets together. And okay, here they are. I hope people on the live stream can see the tweets. I'm on Terry Molluski's. And if Terry has any gumption, welcome Terry, come here and ask questions. But because you are hiding, you can run. He can run, but he can't hide. Okay. So here are his tweets. First tweet. They imagine we won't notice the jaw-dropping hypocrisy using Parmar, the Air India bomber, as the martyred poster boy for their referendum campaign, while telling us how sad and outraged they are about his 331 innocent victims. How is that supposed to work? Okay, so see the dishonesty. Okay, the Air India bomber, the only person who crown charged is Ripudaman Malik, Bagdi and Rayat as accomplices. The main financer, Ripudaman Malik, who was funded $2 million by Indian government. And do you see those names anywhere here? And Ripudaman Malik his picture might not be on that poster, but he's the one who is funding most of these things in Surrey. He is having this Khalsa Credit Union. Have you seen Terry Molluski ever call out his Indian government links? No. He just wants to focus on this guy who was never charged, who was killed by Indian government. Well, the Indian government had the full opportunity to bring him in front of the world, have him confess on live TV what he did, but they basically went ahead and silenced the witness. He was a witness to this entire thing. And now Terry Molluski, because the dead can't speak, so Terry Molluski can keep on going and defame anybody, So what a dirty little tactic. Anyways, okay, here is his proof. Okay, they want us to ignore. Okay, let me make it slightly bigger. Okay, I'm also reading proof live, so let's see if we can debunk. ਭਾਜੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪ ਨੂੰ ਮਿਊਟ ਕਰ ਲਓ। If you can mute yourself, yeah, thank you. Okay, so we are back to Terry's tweet. So there is a tweet here. He has a screenshot, and I think this screenshot is directly from the court case because I see the paragraph numbers. I'm very familiar with those PDFs. So they want us to ignore the abundant proof that Parmar ordered the bombs from Riyadh and got the tickets used to check in those bombs, whose remnants conclusively matched parts bought by Riyadh. There is no fantasy bomb or bomber, just Parmar's tickets and Riyadh's bomb. Okay, if Riyadh was the one who was making the bombs, why was Riyadh given only manslaughter charge that he didn't knew he was making the bomb? Okay. So the paragraph he has given is, Both bombs were picked up at the same time by one individual and were paid for with cash. The holders of MC and LC ticket checked in an airport, blah, blah, blah. So there's no mention of Parmar here, okay? But he's just talking about the name of the that were given M Singh and L Singh for ticket. This is coming directly from that Air India 182 judgment. Now, what he's not telling is that in that entire judgment, the case is not that Parmar booked the ticket. In the entire judgment, the Crown is saying Ripu Daman Malik booked the ticket. Okay. But this liar is blatantly saying Parmar ordered the bombs and got the tickets. But the whole case, if you read the entire judgment and the evidence which is in document on that judgment, is basically that it is Malik who booked the tickets. And you want me to show that page where it is there? He's basically quoting that case. Let me open up that entire PDF. Okay, I have that entire PDF of that case. Let me show you guys the judgment here. Let's open up the Kanishka bombing judgment. And let me open up the judgment. Okay, here is the judgment. I've opened it up. I'll just share it on the screen as well. Let's go back and let's change the screen that we are sharing. Okay. This is the judgment. People who are on live stream can see it. Okay. Let's figure out where is that. So he has quoted paragraph number 195. And I'll show you which paragraph he is showing you. Let's debunk this idiot's, no, yeah, this is the paragraph. You see this? This is the paragraph number 195 he is showing up. If you guys can see on your... Yep, you guys can see that. And I think he has this is the paragraph. The MNL Singh booked the tickets. And he's actually changed the language a bit. It seems he has edited that paragraph. But anyways, he has taken out Professor P's evidence of confusion that tried into strong the boy bomb. Okay, he's taken out the first line. You know why? He has edited that judgment and he has taken out the first line from that paragraph. He basically PDF edited this judgment. You see, it starts from both tickets were picked up at the same time. But the paragraph doesn't start like this. The both tickets were picked up at the same time is actually the third sentence. Can you guys see this dishonesty? But he has edited it, and why he has edited it? Because he doesn't want you to see the first line. The first line says, significantly, Professor P's evidence is also consistent with other evidence at trial, leading to the strong inference that Air India Flight 182 was destroyed by a bomb contained in the suitcase loaded in Vancouver. Why he doesn't want you to see this line? Because this line is telling you that it was never conclusively proven. Only an inference was there that a bomb brought down the flight. The investigators were never able to conclusively find any explosive residue and prove that it was the bomb that brought down the flight. They only had an inference that most probably it was a bomb. Okay, so he doesn't want to see the line, so he takes that line out. And then he takes another line out. As set out earlier, the M Singh and L Singh tickets were booked at the same time by one individual. But they don't name the individual here. So he basically edits his PDF. You see, he doesn't show you that line. Because the name of that individual was known. It was Malik. The evidence will show that Malik booked the ticket because Mrs. D claimed it was Malik who booked the tickets. But he takes that line out, okay? And then he shows you this last paragraph. Why he shows you that last paragraph is going to be evident in the next tweet that he gives. In the next tweet, On the next tweet, he says, on one more detail, the idea that Indian agents did it rests on their not taking the flight. So, did they buy tickets, check in bags, but never board? No, only the bombers did that. And lots of people avoided Air India because of the threats. Form an RCMP affidavit. Now he brings out an RCMP affidavit. What is that affidavit saying? On 9th of June 1985, Source D advised Constables McLean and Constable T. Smith, the members of the Malton Sikh Ontario, were told not to fly Air India as it would be unsafe to do so. So somebody had already informed the Sangat members that not to fly because and this is some RCMP certificate. So he's saying what is the relevance here? Even in the court judgment, Miss D has stated that Malik told in the court, Malik confessed to her that we went around and telling people that not to board the aircraft. And the evidence is it was Malik and Hardyal Joel who were going around. Hardyal Joel was going around and telling the people not to board the aircraft because we are putting up a suitcase on it with the bomb. You want me to show where this exact detail on who is going around? Let's go back to the judgment. Okay, and here I'm going to Control F and dial Johal. Let's see where Johal comes. Oops. Let's Control F Johal. You'll see where. Okay. Miss D is 238. Okay, let me show you the who went around the airport is clear in the court case. Okay, here is what? Okay. Why is it going to open in Firefox? For some reason this is not okay. Let me pull this up from my Miss D's evidence. Okay, here is the actual paragraph number 294, in which this is what the actual evidence was in the court case. Mr. Malik told Miss D that Hardyal Jol was a hard-working man who did a lot of running around and was part of the group that delivered the suitcases to the airport. He had run around the airport encouraging any Sikhs he was not to board the plane. Mr. Malik also told her that Mr. Bagri, Balwant Badere, and another male had gone with Hardyal Jol to the airport with suitcases. So it was Hardyal Jol who was telling on the airport as well as before on the airport to members of local Sangat that please don't board this aircraft because we are planning something silly. So what does our friend Terry Malusky does his dishonest self? He just says Indian agent, like he just quotes RCMP this thing, but like nothing around it. He said some Sikhs were telling members of Sangat don't board it. Yes, they were, and it's Hardyal Jol. We know it. The friend of Ripudaman Malik, the main person who was financed by Indian government, who had links to Indian government, who was the state guest of Indian government. We know this. So then he says, so when Khalistani befouled the anniversary with lied about their deep concern. Basically what he does is, in this tweet says, he just throws around selective inferences that some Sikh members of the communities, foot soldiers, knew that the bomb is going to go. So it was Sikhs who were planting the bomb. But he's hiding all that information about who were these Sikhs. Were they the conspirators or were they just foot soldiers? Who was telling them to do it? We have all that evidence. It was Malik. And who was Malik? Malik was the guy who was getting funds from the Indian government. And then how is the Indian government treating Malik? With kid gloves. Indian government is basically inviting him to India, funding his businesses, letting him kind of, getting him off no-fly list, etc., etc., etc. And then there are CC investigators who are saying Malik is the main Indian mole here, who is basically working for Indian consulate. We know Malik was in touch with Amarjit Singh IFS all the time before his assassination. So, but he doesn't talk about any of those people. He just Actually, I'm going to kind of challenge him that he actually edited this PDF. You see this, the tweet, and he's basically selectively sharing information and kind of trying to mislead the public. I don't know how clear it was, but hopefully you guys have, understood a bit of it. Mr. Singh, any question on what I was showing? Were you able to follow what I was trying to prove?
ਜੀ ਭਾਜੀ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਨੋ ਆਈ ਮੀਨ ਐਕਚੁਅਲੀ ਜਦੋਂ ਆਪਾਂ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਨਾ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ 1984 ਨੂੰ 40 ਸਾਲ ਹੋ ਗਏ ਤੇ 40 ਸਾਲਾਂ ਚ ਅਸੀਂ ਕੀ ਸਿੱਖਿਆ ਸੋ ਮੈਂ ਤੇ ਇਹੀ ਚੀਜ਼ ਤੇ ਬੜਾ ਖੁਸ਼ ਹਾਂ ਵੀ ਘੱਟੋ ਘੱਟ ਸਿੱਖਾਂ ਨੇ ਅਗਲੇ ਨੂੰ ਚੈਲੰਜ ਕਰਨਾ ਸਿੱਖ ਲਿਆ ਜੇ
Can you
ਅਸੀਂ
can you,
ਕਹਿੰਦੇ
can you
ਨਾ
speak in English, Mr. Singh, if I may, if you don't mind?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't mind at all. What I'm saying is, it's been 40 years, and this question is often asked within our community: what have the Sikhs learned from 1984 in these last 40 years? And I'm really happy that you're actually challenging these people who have created these myths. That they sort of work in this mythology, and I'm truly happy. And what my answer is that what the Sikhs have learned is to challenge them, to encounter their false narrative, and we're building our own narrative. Yes, it took us 40 years, but also look at, I mean, we were a stateless people who were uprooted from our cultural heritage in 1947. There was the economic genocide taking place at that time, and we were very weak people. And as Indira Gandhi had written in her plans, that Sikhs will never be able to raise their heads again, but those plans fell apart. So thank you so much for doing this, and I believe more and more people need to come forward and start challenging our enemies, those who wanted us wiped off from the face of this earth.
Yeah, no, thank you for those comments, and I want to kind of add more detailed color to that because we Sikhs know it, but many of the Canadian and Americans don't know it. The background of Sikhs, most of the Sikhs who migrated to US and Canada, Sikhs have been primarily a farming community with a lot of soldiering. They fought, we admirably, in Second World War, supporting the British and the Allies. Thousands and hundreds of thousands of Sikhs laid down their lives and volunteered. They volunteered to fight for the free world. But Indian government, with its vast resources, they knew, like the Indian, when Sikhs came to Canada and US, most of them were like blue collar workers. They were not highly educated people who could fight this fake narrative in media. They couldn't articulate their cause. They could work hard, but they couldn't articulate their cause. And there was this sophisticated disinformation campaign launched using paid sources like this Terry, who works for CBC, and most of the Indian agents were educated. They could articulate in English. So they kept defaming the community. They kept blaming the victim. They killed people to defame a community, and they kept blaming the victim of their crimes as like the terrorist, and kept painting themselves as the so-called democracy, while it is the most brutal regime that exists on planet Earth today is the Indian regime, the way it treats its minority and the way it treats the Sikhs. But now the time has come, as the second and third generation Sikhs are also getting educated. We can read evidence, we can go and read that court's judgment, and the onus is on us to go and read it and present the truth and the evidence. We will always, the Sikh values will always stand by the truth. For whatever the truth is, whether it is good or bad, it's not going to be, like Indian nationalism, that just because it serves your cause, you go ahead and spread disinformation, kill people, and rape people. That is against the very basics of Sikhi. And that is what we are fighting. And we will always propagate the truth, the right evidence, and show it to the entire world, the real evidence around Ganishka. And then let people make up their mind. And then let anybody look at this evidence and tell me with straight face that it was not the Indian government which killed and massacred 329 innocents, its own so-called people, citizen. They were Canadian citizens, but India considered them their own citizens still, to defame them, just the Sikhs and their entire cause. Anybody with an iota of self-respect and morality will know what exactly happened here once they look at this evidence. And it's their job. And if you are watching this, please spread this, because those people have been killed. It's been 40 years. Those people have been killed. Kids, elderly, pregnant, like kids who were in the womb of their mothers. What justice we can give them? The only justice we can give them, we'll never find Surinder Malik, the Indian Consul General. Nobody knows where he is. where Indian government has hidden him. We will not find Devinder Ahluwalia, the Indian Consul General. And so what we can find is, what we can really get out is the truth. At least have closure for the families of the victims or the souls of the victims, that this is what exactly happened. This is what how it was done. And then the society can learn from it, hopefully. But unfortunately, the Indian nationalist segment, especially the Indian educated middle class elite, they don't want to know the truth. They want to believe the falsehood. They want to believe the falsehood that, India government is so benign, is like a Vishnu ka avatar, and they can't go ahead and do this. Like, well, this the reality is very different. Yeah, any other speaker who wants to come on? Let me see if he made any other tweet. Terry, look at the dishonesty of this guy. Amazing. Like, he's basically now blatantly editing. Okay. He's blatantly editing a judgment to kind of take out lines, and even the screenshots are edited. Oh, amazing, man. Amazing. Yeah. Can he be taken to court for this? Maybe we can. We can think about it. And, you guys want me to show how what paragraph he edited? Let me show it again. Okay. So we have another. Yes, we have similar. Yeah, we have another speaker here. Yeah, you have a question? Please go ahead, or anything to add? Go ahead, please. Yeah, I'm not getting many speakers today. People are just listening. Is it because I'm doing it in English? Yeah.
His English is good. I think you're going over like everything, so that's why people are listening. But let me know when you're done the presentation, then I can just jump in after. I was gonna talk about Surinder Malik a little bit. I don't know if you touched on him at all. Surinder Malik.
Just one sec. Let me. Okay. Yeah. So I think your question was Surinder Malik, right?
Yeah. Did we talk about him yet?
Yeah. No, we haven't talked about it in detail, but we can talk about him. Let me bring the person that he's talking about. And if you want to add something, if you have something on him, go ahead, and then I can add what I know.
Why don't you let me know if you want to start? I can give you my little spiel on what I think about him.
Okay.
And then feel free to add. So for me, I think with Surinder Malik, he's important part of the story. He's a key player in dismantling, the idea that certain people heard about what was happening prior to and changed their seats. So that whole narrative. I think what I remember is, I don't know if anybody knows, a student named Jasbir Singh. He was living in Toronto, like June 5th, 1984. And he learned about the attack on the Golden Temple from radio, right? And so he got really upset. He goes into Surinder Malik's office because he worked in that area, and he was in the office at the time. And there's a picture of Indira Gandhi. It's the Indian Council office, by the way. Picture of Indira Gandhi, and he takes it down. Like, he grabs it aggressively, throws it to the ground, kind of destroys the picture, just as an act of protest. I mean, I'm sure, like, hearing what he heard on the radio, I don't know what the report was, but we know what happened in 1984. So then he throws the picture on the ground and he takes off. And from what I hear and what's written and reported, Surinder Malik used that exact moment just to capitalize on the media. So something super important for me, the reason I'm bringing this up is Indian apparatus has been dismantling Sikhs in the West, right? And they went in to destroy their image completely in anticipation for Kanishka. Not because Sikhs became terrorists after Kanishka. No, they were being labeled as terrorists in anticipation for Kanishka, so that when Kanishka takes place, people will already just be so fed up with hearing about the Sikh terrorists and their plans. So after that happens, the picture is destroyed. Surinder Malik goes and takes down a picture of Gandhi, like the pervert Gandhi,
Yeah.
we all know. And he uses the story to capitalize for the media, right?
Yeah.
So now Surinder Malik is he's messing up his own office. He's like breaking stuff with his own office. You've heard the story, right? Before, Harjeet?
Yeah.
So I thought that was super interesting. What was even more interesting was, because that guy left, because Jasbir just left the room, unhone baad jo, like, ਪਤਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਿੱਥੋਂ ਲੱਭ ਕੇ ਲਾ ਕੇ ਆ ਗਏ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਵਾਪਸ, right? They found him and they approached him at his home, wherever it was. They found him and his hand was chopped. Okay. And he went and admitted that he did it silently in a very disassociated, traumatized way. From what I'm hearing is that one, he did the thing, they chopped his hand off, right? And then he admitted what he did. So where does this come from? How is
No, I don't think they chopped his hand off. What happened was that this guy, the young boy who went to the Indian consulate and destroyed a picture of Indira Gandhi, and fit of anger because Indian army had attacked the holiest shrine of Sikhs in India. So he basically reacted and just did that stuff, but he left. Then what happened was the moment he left, Surinder Malik was heard, actually not heard, seen, calling his staff and telling them to basically destroy, what you call, like furniture and all kind of furniture and put it on fire and claim that all this destruction was done by this young boy, the young boy who already didn't have one hand. He only had one hand, okay? And we know this because there was an RCMP lady police officer who was deployed outside the consulate for security. She was the prime witness of all this. And actually, there was a case brought out against the consulate for faking the attack, that and blaming that boy falsely. And but Surinder Malik actually pleaded diplomatic immunity, and that is how he got out of that mess. Otherwise, there would have been a very unique case. Like, unluckily for Surinder Malik, look, imagine like this handicapped boy, okay, young boy, who in his fit of rage comes and destroys one picture, and then
so his hand was already.
I think so.
There was rumors that they.
No.
This doesn't really matter.
If there is a rumor, there's nothing I have read or seen which confirm that they chopped his hand, but they could be. But we have to investigate further. But what I definitely know is that. Yeah. So he was already a handicapped person, and then he came, and a young boy. And imagine like a handicapped young boy just showing some emotion by destroying a picture, and then the so-called consul general gathering his staff, destroying his own furniture, and being caught by the RCMP lady police officer. They thought that there is lack of morality, such a deep lack of morality within Canadian police as well, that poor lady will not complain. She saw this and she basically reported. And that is the level, that is the kind of person that Surinder Malik was, the Consul General of India in Ottawa. It's a joke. So Indian system, has a history of conducting false flag operations and killing its own citizens to kind of portray oneself as a victim and gain some kind of strategic kind of win, or image making or narrative building, that they call it. So yeah, but thanks for bringing that up, Simran. Yeah, that's
so interesting, because I think the Open Secrets book by M.K. Dar.
Yeah,
he was saying too in there. He was like, there is no way out but to oblige. I'm reading it, by the way. There's no way out but to oblige the department and government, even if the job is dirty and unlawful. And so all these Surinder Malik, M.K. Dar, all these people from the same program know that if you don't do what they say, they will hit you and kill you, like on a lonely road, right? Like, be careful, because they'll come get you. So they have
the best quote actually from M.K. Dhar's book is M.K. Dhar, just for benefit of the audience, and and if you can quote more from him, that'll be amazing. But I also want to add, just to give context to people, you and I know who M.K. Dhar is, but M.K. Dhar, for the sake of audience, is the a retired spy master of India. He retired from the second highest position within Intelligence Bureau, which, as I said, is the most powerful intelligence organization within. But maybe consciousness woke up, and he wrote a book called After Retirement: Open Secrets. And the most telling statement in that book is, he says that in terms of committing atrocities on its own citizens, the Indian regime is worse than the regime of Idi Amin. So Idi Amin, if you guys can Google, he massacred hundreds and thousands of his own citizens. So he basically said our regime is worse than Idi Amin when it comes to punishing its own citizens. So with that said, Simran, yeah, talk about that book. What all that he has shared. That's a book everyone should read. It's called Open
Everyone
Secrets.
should read. It's a thick book, though. You know, it's hard to go through, but there was something interesting in there. Like, basically, MK Dar, if anybody doesn't know, he's the former head of IB, posted to Canada 1 year before Operation Blue Star, specifically to do dirty mischief to provoke Canadians against Sikhs. So MK Dar was very close to Indira Gandhi. He knew his job was to come to Canada to provoke Canadians against Sikhs. And that's why I like on the Kanishka story, I'm always wanting to talk about how we have to say what happened in anticipation of Kanishka. So which cases were happening in Canada from 1980s to 84. But, you know, Harjeet's download of the flights from detail to detail has been one of the most fantastic things that I've sat through. And I'm not even, I don't want to listen to it just once. I would rather make more opinions on the 80th time I listen to it, because there's no way you can figure everything out one time. So honestly, thank you, Harjeet, for putting in all that work. A lot of us will help like before and after stuff. But yeah, the scenario we have in Canada is that the Indian state has a continuous pattern, right? That Sikh Canadians should be concerned about the Sikh image as well. So another thing, I'm going on a monologue. Harjeet, just cut me off when you want.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
Another thing, I was watching this video the other day, and it was on a news channel, and they're talking about they're talking about the 1985 bombing, right? How it was the hugest terrorist event in Canadian history. So my heartstrings go out to all Sikh youth in the future in Canada. Like, kids these days are going to have to go to school, elementary school, high school, and learn about the biggest terrorist event in Canadian history. And I find that so dangerous because they're going to emphasize intra-Sikh violence, Sikh-on-Sikh violence, and it'll take away the Indian state and bring it back to square one, that we're just terrorists. So these incidents I don't want to run away from. And it's very unfortunate that the loved ones of the victims of Air India, right? Like, they're the actual true victims, but I may get canceled for this or whatever, but I believe the true victims are all of Canadian youth now going forward, because they're going to have to learn information that's not true. And that's so dangerous psychologically that, like, I hope all of us work together now, whoever is here, whoever's in the anonymous listeners, who knows, that we work together to make sure that if we're going in, because the news channel, they said 1 in 3 Canadians do not even know what the terrorist attack was, like the 1985 bombing, and that like 60% or so of Canadians just kind of know about it, but don't really. Like, there are people that actually think the plane was hijacked. Like, they don't even know that, like Harjeet showed us so eloquently, that, you know, there was careful planning, multiple players involved prior to the bomb even getting into the luggage. Then the luggage got onto the plane. So there was no hijacking, right? There's no crazy Sikh terrorist in a beard. So that, I really wanted to talk about that with the kids. And I hope that everybody listening, their heartstrings go out to the youth, because I don't want my kids to come home from school one day and say, Mom, like, okay, so Nanna's a terrorist because they said you guys bombed a plane. And we know how kids are. They're very direct, right? So we know how people are getting indoctrinated these days. So that's my one rant about Canadian kids. And then did you talk about David Kilgour already?
Yeah, I'll talk about David Kilgour, but I'll touch this topic that you raised. It's a very important topic. Okay, this goes to the one of the part of my topic of the presentation was why they did it. Why would Indian government go ahead and kill 329 people of Indian origin with Canadian passports? Very important to understand that what had happened in that time period. It was Cold War was going on. India was quote unquote West's enemy on paper. Okay, because India was mostly Russian ally. And in that setup, India committed this dastardly act of attacking the Sikh holiest shrine with tanks and army. A full division of Indian army basically attacked the holiest shrine of India. It's like attacking, for Christians, the Catholic, whatever Pope center in Vatican, or for Muslims attacking the Kaaba, and for Sikhs, it's basically the holiest center for Sikhs, the Darbar Sahib in Amritsar. 5,000 people, innocent civilians, were killed as part of one attack in a matter of 3 4 days. Tanks, artillery guns, helicopter gunships, everything was used in a small civilian area to funnel out 50 to maybe 100 armed militants. They used every single weapon that Indian army had in a civilian area. Imagine like setting off tanks. 15 tanks attacked one building. One building. They couldn't funnel out like 50 young youth, village youth out of that building. And artillery shells, everything was used. Anyways, and within that, 5,000 people. The estimates vary. My belief is around 5,000 people died. Uh, After that, not only that, they basically massacred 35,000 innocent Sikhs in 119 different parts of cities of India in a matter of 3 days in November 1984. After that, what happened was the Sikhs world over got a lot of sympathy from the world, especially from the Western countries, and the idea that Sikhs should have their own country gained ground and they cannot survive within the brutal Indian regime and the way it is treating them. And now to counter that narrative, India had to come up with something. So what they came up with was let's figure out a way to pump in some extremist elements, finance some extremist elements within the Sikh diaspora, and then use them to kind of conduct a big terror attack, which then we can blame on the Sikhs as a community and basically label the entire Sikh struggle as a terrorist struggle. And this was a very powerful strategy, and it worked out very well from them. Once they bombed the aircraft, they were able to label the Sikhs as terrorists and extremists and people who were just religious extremists and who just hated Hindus. And they were the Sikhs, the support for the Sikh cause dropped down significantly after this event. So that was the motive that the Indian government had. Now the repercussions were devastating for people who grew up in that time. They were the Sikh youth were getting beaten up in schools, being called a terrorist in their face. I have spoken to many people who were young boys at that point in time, and they talk about the horrors they had to go through. Because while that thing was not talked about openly in the media, people knew about it, and people would blame Sikhs, and so this entire community was defamed for a plan and an act which was masterminded by the Indian agencies. And there is no single Sikh, even nominal Sikh on planet Earth, who can ever say that bombing a flight full of Hindus is the right thing to do to fight the Indian government. You can never find such a Sikh. That is the level of values that Sikhs imbibe and the culture we imbibed, and then blaming that community by such a false flag operation was a criminal act of highest order. And so now to the point, they are trying to do it again. But the good thing is there are many patriots, Canadian patriots, CC agents, RCMP agents who have put out the entire evidence in public. You also have to admire the courage of Zuhair Kashmiri, Brian McAndrew, the two top correspondents from Toronto Star and from Globe and Mail. And they published a full book on it, detailing in detail the evidence in 1988 itself. So the evidence is there. The issue is that we don't have the media picking up the evidence and portraying the right evidence in front of the people. And media is just basically acting lazy because this is not a big story for them. And then Indian government has vast resources. They will hire some odd, a guy who is looking for making his ends meet in old life, like Terry, and basically you will keep pumping disinformation. So I think the onus is on this generation of diaspora from India, whether they are Sikh or Hindu. At the end of the day, people from that subcontinent who were murdered, it is onus is on them, for people like you, me, to get.
I talked to my sister's kids too, and
Yeah.
they're 12, 7, 6. Like, I do not want them going to school
Yeah.
and having to read
No,
Canadian
no.
history.
Let the Canadian history books be wrong. We have other places. The onus is on us, and I'm putting the onus on everybody who's listening today, who have the ability to read, write. The onus is on us to get educated on this and to spread the truth, not disinformation, and to fight the disinformation. But if we don't do that, in spite of our education, in spite of knowing the facts, then I don't think we have done our bare minimum duty even as an average citizen, leave alone as a patriot, leave alone as a member of Sikh community, or leave alone as a member of Indian community. So every Hindu, Sikh, Christian, whosoever is interested in this, hears about it, it is your responsibility to learn the entire story. It is your responsibility before you start blaming anyone. You have to learn the facts. And here are the facts. I'm trying to give it to you. I will probably, I'm trying to get a small documentary made, like within 5 minutes, 10 minutes, short videos made using animation or something, where I can put out the evidence. All my evidence is with references. If I am wrong, even on a single point, you can go and check it and kind of call me out. And I want to kind
You're
of,
not wrong. What you've done is you've taken multiple inquiries, 6 to 7 books, and all of them have missing pieces of information, and you're putting a timeline through. And it's just too much to absorb. So I definitely don't think you're wrong. I just think, who has time to read 7 books and 2 inquiries about a dead case? Like, who has
Yeah.
the time? So put it together and they'll all read it.
Yep. And don't let anybody spread this disinformation that Sikhs did it, Khalistanis did it. It is the Indian government who planned, masterminded, and executed it using some local criminal Sikh foot soldiers. That, that's fine. You can hire anybody if you have vast amount of resources. But the real thing is, who was the mastermind? Who was the one who was planning it? Who was the one who was the guiding hand behind it? So that is what is
So in
important.
Terry's world, it's always been Parmar, but we need to shut that down, because talking about one mastermind is so unfortunate, because we know there's multiple brains,
Yeah.
right? This is a big brain baby of like
Yeah.
multiple people.
Yeah.
That's a really good question.
No. The question to ask Terry, if he says Talwinder Parmar was the mastermind, the guy who was killed was never charged by Canadian agencies, but was killed by India, was never put up in front of people. If he was the lone mastermind, and his case is that Indian government is innocent, like, and had nothing to do with him and other thing that happened. If he was the mastermind, okay, so one guy bombed 2 planes. So then the onus is on him to say, okay, what was the conspiracy that he was masterminding? Who all did he use? How did he book tickets? How did he get it on the plane? Who were the other people? And why are those people? Are those names that we know? Or are those names that we don't know? If we don't know the name, how do you know that he masterminded them? If you don't even know their names. Okay. So the onus is then somebody who claims somebody's mastermind. So like, when CC agents claimed that India is the mastermind, they have laid down the entire conspiracy with number one person, financer, accomplice. They have laid down the evidence of how the financer got his money from government of India and how he paid the money. They have witnesses who are saying that it is Malik who was doing this. We have witnesses who are saying he booked the tickets. We have the phone number of Hardayar Jol from whom the tickets were booked. We have all those details. So we know the whole conspiracy. When this guy says, no, there was only Parminder Parmar who was the mastermind, then who are the other people? Where are they? What is the conspiracy? So the onus is like, it's just a bullshit,
It's so bullshit.
argument.
And it's like, if Talwinder, let's just say Talwinder Parmar does not represent the Babbar Khalsa, and by the way, everybody, there's multiple Babbar Khalsas, not just one. Why would Canada wait until 2003? This is nothing against Canada. I love Canada. I'm Canadian born, but why would they wait until 2003 to say that Babbar Khalsa is a terrorist organization? And Babbar Khalsa stayed as a charity until 2003. So I just don't understand. There's so many discrepancies with Parmar, but that's what I feel like people really capitalize on. Like Terry and all these losers, like that's their bread and butter, right? It's like blaming everything on Parmar.
No. So their bread and butter, they know, yes, you are right. That is the tactic. But they know what's going to happen. Okay. So Terry knows that people will not go and, read 2 court cases. They will not go and read, like the whole John Major Inquiry Commission. They will never know that the John Major Inquiry Commission refused to hear the evidence of CC's agents and all the evidence that was available. And so I can go and claim because I am the expert, and they will never be able to check me. But now there is one person. I am going to check him. I already checked that he just falsified a court document by editing the first line of it, okay, and taking it out on the screenshot. So, but anyways, and the truth is, Ji wants to say something. Hanji, and the truth is.
So Talwinder Parmar was so smart that he masterminded the bombing of a plane. Like it's a complex thing, getting through security and whatnot.
Yeah.
And then he was that smart, and then he went back to Punjab.
Huh.
So like, can you see that? Who will be smart enough to go back to Punjab from that point?
Hmm.
And then Indian government Government is supposed to be smart.
Hmm.
They had the mastermind right in their police station,
Hmm.
right? That was an opportunity for them to show to the whole world this guy was a mastermind.
Hmm.
He had did it like this. This was a
Hmm.
sequence of steps.
Hmm.
We have him in our custody.
Hmm.
We are going to put him to trial and show to the whole world
Hmm.
how bad Khalistanis are.
Hmm.
Instead, what they do? They shoot him down in the police station.
Hmm.
Why? Like, there are so many things that don't add up, and they are so stupid.
Hmm.
Right? Nothing of it makes sense.
So they not only did that, they then invite the main accused against whom we have the evidence to India, and they pressurize the US government to take him off the no-fly list. The only guy who's actually accused in the court case trial, against whom we have witnesses, and they invite him as a state guest. Amit Shah meets him, Raw Chief meets him, and then they basically say, oh, he's the bridge between Indian government and the Sikh community. He's not the bridge, he's the tool with which you are controlling the Sikh community. Sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
Yeah, and Modi, and then they put a statement, and Malik puts a statement that Modi is a good prime minister. Sikhs should, forget everything and, try to mend ways with India and blah, blah, blah. So much BS. But the two things I wanted to say. So, one thing, like we discussed earlier, what did Sikhs achieve in 40 years? So, what we achieved in 40 years is that the G7 nations, 3 G7 nations, America, Canada, and Australia, have kicked out Indian spies. They have openly called up and said that India is a dishonest nation, it's not trustworthy, it is causing problems within their countries, and it is harassing Sikhs. It's killing Sikhs. So this is what we have achieved in 40 years, and it's not a small achievement. India now is in the same league as Iran and other rogue nations. And this is the best opportunity to tell the whole world that, look, this is not today only. They have been doing it since 1980s, and Kanishka bombing was a part of that. So if there is an opportunity today to tell our side of the story to the world, there is never going to be a better time than today.
Yeah.
That's all I would consider. And then one
That's
last
so
thing,
true,
right?
and you made me think of. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, and one last thing, right? Why do they hire Sikhs? And this is one thing very interesting, right? I read a Malcolm X quote, and Malcolm X was a genius. He was a very smart guy and very astute political observer. He said, they will hire your people to kill you so that they can say your people killed you. And the Indian government exactly follows that.
Intrinsic violence, the Sikh on Sikh violence narrative. That's it. That they're just killing each other. That's so interesting.
Okay,
That's
I'm
why
gonna
we really have to. Yeah.
I'm gonna just go to this. This is to this point. I got this news item. Okay, when Ripudaman Malik, the main accused of bombing, whose name Terry Milewski will never take, the only guy who was actually officially accused, against whom we have litany of witnesses, evidence and evidence and evidence, who was financed $2 million. You know how the Indian government treats him? When he was assassinated, this is the headline in an Indian newspaper. The headline says, BJP, the ruling government of India party, pays homage to social worker Ripudaman Singh Malik after he was shot dead in Canada. Reacting to the news, BJP leader said he was in Canada and doing seva for the community. We know whom he was doing seva for, okay? His name came in a bombing, but he said it is baseless. Later, he was also acquitted by the court. He did a great contribution to the community. He contributed to schools and sponsors religious teachers in Punjab. And the same thing Terry Milewski will say. He'll say, no. The main accused of Air India bombing, who the actual accused, the guy who Crown actually accused, against whom we have evidence, we have living witnesses even today, against whom we have the money trail, as per Terry Milewski, this guy is innocent. He's a good man. Only Talvinder Parmar, whom we can't go and talk to, nobody knows now where he is. He was never accused. No evidence was actually really presented against him.
Was Talvinder Parmar or the Babur Khalsa?
We'll talk about. But hold me, just land this up. So only that person is the sole mastermind. Nobody helped him. Nobody gave him funds. We don't know how magically he got the funds, how magically he transported 2 bombs, and how magically he became clean shaven to load the bombs at the aircraft. That idea I don't have. But he is the mastermind. Believe me. And why we should believe him? Because he's Terry Milewski from CBC. Okay, what do you have as evidence? Oh, I have this RCMP affidavit, and where is that affidavit and reference? That I don't have, but it is in my secret, like some treasurer. And you ask him a reference, it's been like 3 months. He's not shared the reference of what that RCMP affidavit is, where that was presented. I can then give you, I can type a better affidavit than that in a PDF. And I just showed you that that guy is forging evidence, and he has actually forged. And I'm going to basically probably take him up on that. And maybe there is some clause, and somebody can advise me. He edited the court judgment, the paragraph 194, and deliberately shared only a tried to show that that's a complete paragraph, but that's not a complete paragraph. He's taken out 2 lines and then showed it almost as a complete paragraph. That's dishonesty of the highest order. And
So manipulative.
yeah.
Did you talk about the RCMP tapes, the ones that magically disappeared and humans had to type the transcript from the Parmar? I can send you guys. I'll post everything I'm talking about.
Yeah. We talked about the tapes. We talked about the tapes. That is again a red herring. Okay, those are tapes. All those transcripts are available. So those were like that's a red herring people Indian nationalists use to blame CISIS and to save Ripudaman Malik and the Indian government. Okay, so I'll tell you how. What were those tapes? People should know, but they keep talking about these tapes. CISIS. These were tapes. Talvinder Parmar and all the people who are member of Babbar Khalsa all were being financed by Ripudaman Malik, the main guy, the main Indian guy who was getting all his money from Indian Bank, State Bank of India. Now, all these people were on CISIS, observation, right up to the bombing. So Talvinder Parmar, 1 year even before the bombing, he was being constant observation. His all phone calls were taped. There was a person who will always tail him wherever he goes. So all those tapes were, if there was something incriminating, they would use it as an evidence. But there was nothing incriminating, so it never became evidence, and he was never charged of a crime. Only once he was held up for possessing explosive substances. That was not a charge for bombing in 1985. And then he had to let go because even possessing explosive thing is not is not a crime in Canada and US, at least till now. So he had to be let go. But those tapes, all his tapes, there was nothing there to kind of prove that he bombed the aircraft. But all the so what CISIS process demanded at that point in time was that when they have taped somebody using a particular clause, then those tapes had to be destroyed if they are not converted into an evidence as per the SOP. So those tapes, because that impacts the right of privacy of an individual. Now, otherwise, CISIS will have tapes on everybody. They can tape you under suspicion, and then they can keep those tapes for ages. They can't do that. So they had to destroy those tapes. And they destroyed the tapes, but they kept the transcripts, knowing that there might be some use in the future. But those transcripts were available all the time. But so there was nothing there. But what the Indian disinformation media basically started using, CISIS destroyed tapes, so Canadian government basically tried to save the sub-militant. No, that's not true. Totally untrue. It was this whole hula about tapes is raised to basically safeguard the role of RCMP. RCMP was the one compromised agency because it was directly reporting to external affairs, and Minister Joe Clark was directly interfering in its functioning and not letting the RCMP basically pursue any evidence against the Indian government. So we have to stop falling for this trap of tapes and all. It's all to disinform people. And anyways,
the awareness on it is key. Is that people so it only shows a pattern that every time we get close to the information, we say, oh yeah, we actually have evidence of this. Yeah, there was some tapes. Oh, but the tapes were destroyed and we had humans type them out, so they're not factoring in human error and all these things. It's so interesting. Every scenario, even Surinder Malik, all of these people, there's always a pattern that they don't exactly have the evidence, but they know a guy that knows, and he must have saw it in a dream or something.
No, we have all the evidence. No, hold on, Simran. We have all the evidence. The evidence is out there. The issue is nobody wants to talk about the evidence. So there is evidence that Ripudaman Malik got $2 million from Indian government, and he was using that money to fund Parmar, to fund Bagdi, to Rayat, and everybody else. There is evidence that Ripudaman Malik was the one who arranged people, paid people to get the suitcases on the aircraft. We have witnesses, first-hand witnesses, who have who have confirmed that Ripudaman Malik was the one who basically paid them and told them to do XYZ. We have evidence that we have video recordings of Ripudaman Malik meeting all these co-conspirators in different houses, in garages. We have people quoting them. Yes, this was a guy kind of doing everything. So there is no lack of evidence. The question is, the thing is that people are not talking about the evidence. They are taking the disinformation and spreading the disinformation. Oh, CSIS destroyed tapes. Oh, Ripudaman Parmar. That's called gaslighting. So what Terry Malusky is doing is gaslighting, and using gaslighting as a tool. He comes up and takes the name of Tarvinder Parmar. Everybody starts talking about that non-entity in this whole thing, and then he takes the focus away from the evidence. We have to stop doing that. We have to get the evidence out. Let's talk about why are CC's agents saying that Indian government did it. Can somebody explain that to me first? Why was Ripudaman Malik having $2 million from Indian government while funding Babbar Khalsa? And those are the things that we have to start talking about, the evidence, and not about the gaslighting. We have to debunk the gaslighting tactic, and there might be something. While I'm talking, I think somebody just said, yeah, go
I
ahead.
just want to quickly add,
Yeah.
when you get a chance, can we explain why Parmar was under observation? Because when we talk about surveillance, India's been trying to extradite him since 1982, and he was held in custody in this Germany trip for a year. But he was released because the Indians couldn't do extradition because it was a poor case. They had no evidence linking him to any killing police or whatever in the 82. This is prior to 84. So when he was released, he came to Canada, I think early 1984, and he was on a level 4 watch because India wanted his extradition. So Canada investigated Parmar because of the Indian government allegations.
No. Even if there were no allegation, they should have, because he was a guy who was openly claiming that I'm going to wage a war against the Indian state. So it is but natural that the agencies will tail him. Otherwise, they'll be foolish. So they were tailing him as part of the process, and they had full knowledge of where he was moving. They had every tape, and now people Terry wants us to believe that while he was under full surveillance and doing all this, he masterminded everything, and none of it is complicity we know, and we never know the conspiracy, but he somehow bound the plate. So that is again, this name Parmar is a red herring. We should stop getting gaslighted. Okay, the real names are Ripudaman Malik, the guy who got the money. Why are we not talking about him? $2 million. The real guy who was funding Parmar, who bought his hair, and he was the real evidence is the evidence against the case against Malik, the relationship Malik had with Surinder Malik, Davinder Ahluwalia, the relationship that he had with the Indian government, the foot soldiers he had, the witnesses that are there who detailed in the court exactly how the bomb suitcases were got on the aircraft by Hardyal Jol on orders of Malik, and what the role Bagdi played, Balwant Bhandeer played, and all that clear evidence. Those people are still living. Those witnesses are still living. Why are these people not behind the bars after all that evidence? Quote unquote, why is the John Major Commission inquiry forbidden from... Yeah, and why was the John Major Commission inquiry forbidden from in fixing the responsibility for the bombing? Why? If they were forbidden, which they have written themselves, they are forbidden to inquire into the role of Indian government to fix the responsibility for the bombing, then what was that John Major Inquiry Commission for? We should stop wasting time on Parmar. We should start talking about the real evidence out there. Because Terry will keep throwing the name of a scapegoat Parmar in the hope that people will start talking about him so that nobody talks about this. So, and we keep getting gaslighted by names like Babbar Khalsa. Sorry, go ahead, Parmar. Go ahead.
I was sorry for bringing him up because the intention was to say that he's the worst person to focus on when we talk about this story. So, but then, yeah. Anyways, finish up.
Yeah. So we have to talk about the evidence, right? So this is just a name, but the evidence is something else. The evidence is against Malik, the financer. The court case is, or the whole court case is against Malik, Bagdi, and Rayat. There are names of Hardyal Jol. The evidence is against them. Nobody's talking about them. The evidence is that the fact that we have CC agents saying Indian government is involved. They are the ones who are directing it, and these are the people who directed it. The evidence is that the Indian government officials refused to board the aircraft. So those are that is what we have to start doing. The onus is on us to talk about evidence, not talk about theories and allegations. We have to look at the evidence which is on record. And what people, disinformation spreaders, are doing is they float theories, fake theories, and people go start talking about those theories without looking at the evidence. We have to stick to the evidence, not to somebody's ideas. And the Terry Maluski might have an idea. Oh, Talvinder Parmar was the sole mastermind, but he has no evidence. The evidence is, what we are saying, and we have to lay down that evidence for the people and let people make up their mind. Let people make up their mind after looking at this evidence. Is Indian government innocent in this, or they have a hand? I will let them decide. Look at that evidence. Go and read that court judgment. And while we are at it, I am going to see if I can make my Google Drive folder in which I have saved all the screenshots um, public. Okay. I am here, but my only
And
worry
we
is,
have to do more spaces in English because you've been doing the Punjabi ones, which are great.
Yeah.
It's improving my Punjabi skills. Thank you so much. But we do need to attract diaspora in this discussion. So I hope this isn't the only space you do. You're gonna do more on Air India, right? Because we really have to spend more time.
yeah.
Just a discussion isn't enough.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, I just let me tell you the RCMP role. Okay, now that we are talking about it, how I feel that RCMP was probably, too much under too much pressure for RCMP's role has to be the one which
Well,
has to be.
they listened to the agents, right? The agents made connections with RCMP, and there's so many conversations. Like they were trusted. So yeah.
Yeah, so I'm going to show you the RCMP, some of the questions that RCMP had to answer. Okay, so none of the witnesses who actually came out, okay, they trusted RCMP. Actually, every witness was dead scared of RCMP. They all trusted only CSIS because every witness thought that RCMP was in the pocket of Malik. And Malik used to openly claim that RCMP is in his pocket. How was he able to claim that? Maybe because Ujjwal Dasanj, who was the AG and Premier of BC, was a fast friend of Malik and actually an Indian government agent. We already know Ujjwal Dasanj is openly known by every person in Surrey knows Ujjwal Dasanj is an Indian government hand. He basically does the bidding of Indian government. And so, and Ujjwal Dasanj was also one who refused to board that aircraft. He was also supposed to travel on that aircraft. And under Ujjwal Dasanj's control, RCMP allowed the murder of Sardar Tara Singh hire the most important witness, the most credible witness against Malik in that trial. He was murdered months before the trial was supposed to begin. And under RCMP protection, he was murdered. And how that happened, we're going to talk about it. Okay, but see how the witnesses feared the RCMP. And this is coming from the Air India 182 judgment, paragraph 375 and 376. Miss D confirmed in her cross examination that she had no interest in meeting with RCMP and that she did not trust them. She had not been happy to see Koppel Best when they unexpectedly appeared at the October 13, 1997 meeting, and she left that meeting wanting to have no further dealings with the RCMP. Now, why was that? Because this was a meeting that she was supposed to have with the CC agent, and CC agent called the RCMP because now the court had to go to the court. But she was dead scared. She had told the CC agent, "If you call RCMP, I'm going to run away." Okay. Miss D was also cross-examined about her meetings with the RCMP on November 2 and her attendance at the Khalsa school with a transmitter hidden in her purse. She testified that she had been very frightened when she met with the RCMP that day. Okay. Now, a couple of other things. Why were they scared of RCMP, all the witnesses? Let me show you some other stuff. She actually said that Malik used to openly claim that RCMP is okay. So Globe and Mail also claimed that one of the witnesses claimed that Malik had a translator in RCMP work for him. That one of the translators who was within the task force was basically a Malik, Lipudaman Malik Small. So that's one. Another thing was, let me bring that up if you can find it. Okay, yeah. Another important thing. Do you guys know there is a person called what's her name? There's another lady who I've forgotten her name now, who also writes a lot. She's also Canadian. Terry. Kim Bolan. Okay, let me bring her up. Okay, so here you guys see Kim Bolan. Okay, she had a role in this whole thing. Okay, let me show you what the role she had to play. So you guys can probably see her on the screen. This is Miss Kim Bolan. What is the role she played? Okay, so Miss D, who was the main witness against Malik, who was the quote unquote lover of Malik, was also a friend of Kim Bolan. Miss D, when she contacted CSIS, she says that immediately she contacted CSIS, somehow Malik came to know that she is talking to CSIS. And Malik started treating, and then she and Malik had a fallout over a period of time because Malik started suspecting her. But imagine, how did Malik come to know, because CSIS was not compromised, how did Malik come to know that Miss D is talking to CSIS? You know why? Because Miss D confirmed that she did not know when she decided to spill the beans, she did not know anyone in CSIS. So she went to her journalist friend, Kim Bolan, and asked her for a contact in CSIS with whom she can share all this information. And it was Kim Bolan who gave her a card of a CSIS agent with whom she started meeting and talking. So
Kim is so messy.
So how come Malik came to know unless Kim Bolan told Malik that she is talking to CSIS? I don't believe the CSIS agent spilled the bean to Malik. The only person who knew that Miss D, the witness, is talking to CSIS was Kim Bolan, Terry Molesky's fast alter ego. Okay. So and this lady is the one who acts so, like, oh, I am this, neutral journalist. But she is the one who literally got that lady killed, Miss D. Well, Miss D could have lost her life. Like, if Kim Bolan had not not passed on that information to Malik that Miss D is talking to CSIS, I am telling you, CSIS would have nailed Malik in a very, very different way. Malik already knew when she was talking. Malik knew that she was bugged, so he had already started taking precautions. But here is this Kim Bolan, Can somebody call? Like, she has blocked me. I actually confronted her with this. That
I am also blocked.
And she immediately blocked me. Okay, and so
There's people that I'll be perpetually blocked by forever. So, but she's not really an interesting person to talk to on this case because she's not going to come into good faith. And then I just want to quickly say, to let you get back to it, Terry, all these people come from the mindset that during that time, and it was in the news video that I saw it in, and I'll post it, that these people were like, who are Canadian citizens? All the people in that plane that died, I don't think they were considered Canadian citizens, if that makes sense, because there's a lot of South Asian people on the plane. So she comes from a mindset where I don't believe she thinks that there are any victims in this case. I believe she thinks that there is an act of terrorism and she has to spew hate against Sikhs and Punjabis as well. Like, because she does have a history of, writing about Punjabis in Canada. So I don't know. I just think she's too emotionally close and has an issue with our people. She's a horrible person to speak with on this case specifically. I don't think she'll enter with good faith.
Yeah, no, like she just still has to answer. Why did she, leak this information about and put the life of that lady in danger by telling Malik in advance that she's the one talking to CSIS now? So, and I think she should be legally held accountable for it.
Absolutely, and she has no credibility if she did that because that's just manipulation.
Yeah. And we have some other, I think, one more person who joined, Sarbloji. Sarbloji, you have a question to ask, something to add?
Haji, thank you, Virji. Really appreciate you doing this space. These are things that I looked into a long time ago. I feel like anybody who hears about this case, part of the Sikh diaspora, and like initially, you take it at face value, but somebody recommended I read the Soft Target book and stuff, and that's when I started questioning things. And I really appreciate you coming on these spaces and like talking about it. My question is, I'm not sure if you already spoke about it. Maybe I might have missed it, but is there anything like that's been said recently by the Canadian government or any Canadian agency about looking into this case again? Because I feel like I saw something about it, but I'm not 100% sure.
Great question. Great question. And I'm going to bring that right up. Okay. I'm going to bring that right
a
up.
dead case too, right? It's never been closed.
I'm
from
going
what
to.
I understand.
No, I'm going to. Yeah, no, it's not. It was supposed to be a dead case, which was closed. But let me, if people who are on live stream can see my screen, and I'm going to, for Twitter space, I'm going to just read it out. This is what I tweeted yesterday. This tweet came out yesterday. Account named Sikh Reflections. They do a great job. And this is my tweet. So let me read their tweet. Sikh Reflections quoted the statement by RCMP Commissioner. His name is Dave Tibol, Pacific Region Commander. He gave this statement and the memorial service for Air India 182. And this is a quote from him. Quote, the Air India investigation is longest and certainly one of the most complex domestic terrorism investigations that the RCMP has undertaken in our history. Our investigative efforts remain active and ongoing. So this is huge. This is the first time RCMP has confirmed that the case is not closed. The case is not buried, and it is active, and they are going to investigate. And I believe this has something to do with the information that came out with Malik's murder. The day Malik was murdered, Malik has to be murdered for specific reason, like it happens in all the cases. Your asset becomes your liability. And the day Ripu Daman Malik was murdered, he was in constant touch with official of Indian government who was who was again an intelligence officer, but masquerading as a civilian, an IFS, a foreign service officer. His name is Amarjeet Singh IFS, and I will show you him on the. People want to know. He was in constant touch with this Indian government official on phone on the day of his assassination, and here is this guy, Amarjeet Singh IFS. Okay, and this guy was in constant touch with Ripu Daman Malik on the day of his assassination. So obviously something came out of that murder of Ripu Daman Malik, of why he was murdered, and it has to be with Kanishka, because that is the biggest project that Ripu Daman Malik executed for the Indian government. And now this article came in, I think Globe and Mail reported that they were like multiple calls, like more than double-digit calls, one after the another, between this guy and Ripu Daman Malik on the day he was murdered. And the explanation he was asked once the report came out. That report came out only months back. The explanation he gave was, he basically wrote an explanation. Oh, I am just my duty was to give passports and visas, so I have to talk to members of community. So I was just talking to, like, what a coincidence. What a coincidence. High-ranking intelligence official of Indian government posted in Vancouver is in touch with the main bombing accused of Air India with multiple calls, back-to-back calls, just before his assassination. So is that only for visas? I doubt so. I will let your intelligence decide what they were talking, and what they were talking, and what for. And this is this guy. You can follow him. You can ask him some tough questions. What is his role in the murder of Ripu Daman Malik? And why did they have to kill their own asset? The person that they are calling, BJP himself is calling. Let's go. What BJP is calling Ripu Daman Malik? A social worker. Okay. So as per okay, let me show you another thing, how the Indian government has been promoting Malik. Okay. So here is the social worker as per them. they also, basically the Indian government also lobbied the American government to take Malik off the no-flying list. Like, why would the Indian government want Malik to be off the no-flying list? And here the India Malik visiting India in 2019. Okay, let me just no-fly list. Yeah, here is this. So, asked about claims by some Sikh netizens that his name was in the US no-fly list and it was removed after high-level intervention from India, Jasjeet admitted that his brother's name was on the US no-fly list, but rubbished the allegations that it was removed. So he said he booked an Air India Canada flight, which did not allow him, as Canada's official carrier recognizes the US flight. So he came by Air France and flew to India. So he's saying, oh, no, 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 he was not taken off the list. He was just, he just flew Air France. So you can be on no fly list, but you can take Air France, okay? And you can bypass the no fly list by just changing the airline. And that is what the poor chap is claiming. Uh, so this is Ripudaman Malik, the darling of Indian government. Okay, and yeah,
Yeah, it looks like there was some possible probe into the Indian government links to Ripudaman saying Malik's killing too. So like, yeah, that's really interesting. I think maybe these things are kind of related to the Niger case as well, right? This kind of information may be coming out.
Yeah, those layers can't be denied, right? It's unfortunate because we have so many things to look at. So if we break down Air India, like I said before, as a propaganda tool, anti-Sikh propaganda tool in anticipation for the bombing, the Kanishka bombing, then all of these things make sense and the timeline works. Because yeah, it's definitely I don't know what Niger would have had to do with Air India specifically, but obviously he's an important, influential player. That's why, okay, I'm not bringing up Parmar for this. Don't worry, we're not talking about Parmar. I'm only saying that they only used Parmar as a scapegoat because of his influence, right? So then we also have to look at impact. You know, there's only so many people that get like that public impact. Like some people hit certain areas, but then there's that one guy that comes in and everybody loves them. So they have to, ruin that guy's image, but.
Yeah, so to that point, right? If there is something to do with the Hardeep Nijjar's murder, actually, I had speculated. That's my suspicion as well now, that there is some connection because when Ripudaman Malik was murdered, there was a lot of kind of demands being raised by Hardeep Nijjar to reopen the investigation. Now he must have been raising that demand. Maybe he had some new evidence. Like the evidence is already out there, as I said. It was just about raising the demand of actually, following up this evidence. So he was actually at the forefront, and Nijjar was a guy who was gaining a lot of respect in that area. I learned he was deeply involved in some of the, work in giving relief during floods. He was also involved. He was a kind of a local hero, mini local hero. He also kind of, he kind of also helped. I think he had some involvement with helping the indigenous people as well. And there was like a time when the floods came in, the devastating floods. He was at the forefront of those efforts. So he was well known and well regarded. And if he was going to launch a campaign for demanding opening up or like a good investigation into Air India 182, that probably led to his maybe also one of the reasons why he was kind of put down. But one of the reasons why I think the Kanishka dealing has something to do with the Nijjar's murder was once Hardeep Singh Nijjar was murdered and Prime Minister Trudeau stood up in the parliament and named India as the mastermind of that murder. There is very unique thing that happened. The Indian media channels immediately on 20th of September, 18th September is when Trudeau announced it in the parliament. Around 20th of September, many Indian channels, they started playing a very bizarre news item. You know what they started playing? They started playing, and it lasted 2 days. They started saying, oh, Air India 182 bombing was done by Canadian intelligence agencies. And I was like flabbergasted. I said, what kind of, like, this is new. And I will probably look up and be able to find some of those videos. Like all these news channels, suddenly they started playing that Canada bombed Air India 182 flight. Now, to me, that was basically a panic reaction. Okay, why would they make that claim? Till now, they were saying that Sikh extremists did it, but now they say Canada did it. So I think it was some kind of a panic reaction that now that Trudeau has made this statement, he will probably now open up the Air India 182 case as well, and they will blame India for the bombing. So they were trying to preempt, and this blame, let's blame Canadian agencies. So to me, that kind of was kind of a confirmation, or at least a strong indication that the Kanishka bombing has something to do with Hardeep Singh Nijjar's murder as well. And let me see if I can show you guys something more interesting before okay, let's talk about maybe if we have time. Unless there's another request. Let me see if there's a question. Yeah, there's some pieces like interesting pieces that happened on the airport. I can talk about that and take you guys through how the bombs actually got on the aircraft. But we have Ravneet who's joined. Ravneet, you want to add anything?
Yes, Paji. I want to add, have you seen the news, when Canadian Parliament has given a moment of silence for Hardeep Singh Nijjar on his first anniversary? So my speculation is that Canada will be the first country to take India to International Criminal Court over this, because we have seen they have not cooperated with the investigation, and this whole point for the Air India investigation and Hardeep Singh Nijjar leads to International Criminal Court, and from there I think Canada will be the first country to recognize Khalistan as the nation. That's my speculation, because why would Canada officially give a moment of silence to an ordinary citizen? He was not a selected or elected member. And so that's why I think they are taking it on a whole different level, because they now want to, they want to get, they want to let India know that that they are now up. Because previously, when this happened, the RCMP was compromised, and from those years now everything has changed, and now Canada is on they want to just confront India more aggressively.
No, I agree with you. I think. Okay. Yeah, if you can just mute yourself for a minute. Yeah. No, I agree with you, Ravneet. I think things have changed in Canada. Canada is finally standing up for its sovereignty, and it has decided to not let India kind of interfere in its affairs in such a blatant way. Having said that, I also want to appeal. It's a solemn appeal to families of victims. The families of victims, I'm sure some of them who lost their parents, who lost their loved ones, they should look at this evidence. They probably already have some of them. They probably know what happened. Some of them, I will not say all of them. I think if we have to get justice to the victims, and I ask those families, you have to come up and ask for the reinvestigation. We cannot let the masterminds and perpetrators go away like this. We have to get the real story out. They should come out. They should talk about it. Why these CC agents are blaming Indian government? Why John Major Inquiry Commission was not allowed to investigate the role of Indian government? Why the terms of reference of John Major Inquiry Commission restricted them from looking into and fixing responsibility for bombing? Why? That question has to be asked. And the families of the victim, I think it is your responsibility as well. I know it's a big loss, but for your loved ones, you have to ask this. I am doing my duty as a concerned citizen to kind of put up the evidence in an unbiased, objective fashion. I think the onus is also on you. Humbly. Anyways, and if you really want to get the truth out, we have to and we have to get the truth out. That is the only justice we can give to the victims, that we finally get the story out of what exactly happened and who did it and why they did it. And okay, with that said, let me just, if we have time, unless there are other speakers coming, because seems we have time, I can walk you also through the what happened at the airport, because how the bombs actually got in. Amazing kind of, like what you say, like how the Indian government security officer actually worked overtime to make sure that the aircraft has the bomb inside. So, as I said, the tickets were booked couple of days before the travel. A guy calls up the CP Airways, books the tickets from Vancouver to Toronto, and from Toronto, the CP Airways flight, which is supposed to come from Vancouver to Toronto, and then the bag was to be changed, and the passenger had to be transferred from the CP Airways flight to the Air India flight at Toronto, and from there it was supposed to fly to Montreal, which is very close by, the same aircraft, pick up more passengers and baggage, and then from there fly to London, and from London to Bombay, and from Bombay to Delhi. That was the flight plan. Now, this person who called to book the tickets, he spoke very sophisticated English as per the agent who reported. The phone number it came from were Hardyal Jol, who was a fast friend of Ripudaman Malik, who was later on we have a witness saying yes, Malik confirmed to them that it was Hardyal Jol whose phone was used, and he got him to book the tickets. Anyways, the person who was speaking on the phone was supposed to have very sophisticated English, was very soft spoken, so it is not so-called Parmar. Parmar cannot even speak a single word of English, and leave alone you can watch his videos. And this soft-spoken person gets the tickets booked, and then there's a person who comes to pick up the tickets. Again, that person has never been found who came to pick up the ticket. He was a guy wearing a turban with a knitted beard, and he wore on the beard he wore like like a net, like so if people who wore net around the neck, generally these are army or ex-army. In India, the ex-army, if you are in army, you cannot keep your beard open like this. You have to kind of tie it down and wear a netted kind of, we call it 50. So if you see a Sikh guy wearing a netted 50, there is 90% chance he's ex-Indian military. So there is this guy with this tied up turban and this the whole thing, who comes up, and he basically picks up the tickets, one-way tickets. The red flag should be flying left, right, and center. He pays cash, when in that time also it was credit card was the permanent mode, but he pays cash and picks up one-way ticket. These are clear-cut red flags for any airline ticketing booking agent. The moment you have one-way tickets paid through cash, that person is immediately flagged. And this was confirmed by the airport security report, that this should have flagged, and this should have investigated there and then. But nothing, no such thing happens. Person picks up the ticket, then on the day a clean shaven person arrives, very sophisticated looking Indian looking guy, who in suit, tie, boot, clean shaven, and as per Terry, this was Talinder Parmar, who suddenly became clean shaven for one day. Okay. But anyways, so this clean shaven person checks in the bag. The lady who checks in the bag, remember that this guy was clean shaven, and he checked in a burgundy colored bag which has a zipper around it. But he forces the lady to check the bag till Delhi. But the system did not allow the lady to check the bag till Delhi, because his ticket from Toronto to Delhi was waitlisted. Only his ticket from Vancouver to Toronto was confirmed. How that lady actually checked the bag till Delhi on a waitlisted ticket, nobody knows, because the system is not supposed to allow it. That answer is not given in any inquiry report. Somehow magically the bag got tagged up till Delhi. Anyways, the bag is onboarded, but the passenger does not board. So if the bag is onboarded and the passenger does not onboard, then how did the aircraft take off without the passenger being on there? Because every airline is supposed to have a baggage to passenger reconciliation system. Okay, let's assume that CP Airways had a poor system and they missed it. That's fine. But then the CP Airways system is supposed to transfer the manifest, passenger and bag, electronically to Air India, because this bag was not supposed to be transferred from the CP Airways flight to the Air India flight. Okay, so they're supposed to send the manifest, and that manifest is then used by Air India to do passenger to bag reconciliation, to make sure that the aircraft does not take away without the passenger. Air India says they never got the manifest. So that is why they were not able to do the reconciliation. CP Airways says, no, our systems are electronically linked. It is not possible that you didn't get the manifest. We sent the manifest. So their system has a stamp of the manifest being transmitted, but the Air India system, Air India claimed in the court that no, we never got the manifest. Now, up to you. Was it a coincidence? Or was something else going on in Air India? Air India, for people to know, it's not a private airline. It is a government of India entity. Everybody there is a government of India officer. All their pilots are basically 80% of them are ex-Indian Air Force. Their security officer, 90% of them are ex-Indian military. Okay. One also has to keep it in mind, in that time period, most of the security arrangements in airports were different. Airlines were more responsible for checking the bags and ensuring the safety of the aircraft versus something like airport security. It was the job of the airline. So the airline security officer job was very critical at that point in time. That was the type of arrangement. Airlines used to have their own staff who will check in the bag and everything, etc., etc. It was not like a centralized system where there were neutral staff which was checking the baggage. So what was happening was that on that day, the CP Airways lands in Toronto. Air India claimed they didn't get the manifest. So if they didn't get the manifest, the question is, how did they even transport the bag from CP Airways aircraft to the Air India aircraft? And it was a single bag which was transported in, like transferred from any other flight to Air India flight. There was only one bag which was transported, which was this one. The rest all bags were locally loaded customers in Toronto. So this single bag with a bomb then gets transferred from CP Airways aircraft to Air India Flight 182 at Toronto. The airport is on level 4 alert. On level 4 alert, there has to be a dog squad which has to check the inside of the aircraft as well as every single piece of luggage. And if people don't know, dogs are almost 99% probability. They have probability of detecting an explosive. If you have an explosive, especially of a certain quantity, dog will not miss it. And on that day, all the dog squads of, for some reason, let's call it a coincidence, were sent on training to Vancouver. So there were no dog squad available at the airport. But in this scenario, the security officer is supposed to call the backup dog squad from the local police. And there was a backup dog squad available in Toronto. But the security officer of Air India on that day went on a leave. One day before this aircraft, this time when the level 4 is the second highest level of alert. This was the month which was the anniversary of the Blue Star operation, and everywhere there was a rumor that something will happen. So the airport was on the highest possible alert. Level 5 is the one after that, and level 4 and level 5 there's not much difference. Level 4 you can basically treat it as the highest level of alert, and in which the Air India security officer was supposed to call the backup dog squad. That officer never called the backup dog squad, and coincidentally, the main security officer goes on leave when this flight is going to take over. Just a couple of days before the flight, and there is a temporary security officer flown in from New York just for this one flight. That person's name is John D'Souza, an ex-Indian military officer with a handlebar mustache, they say. And that person comes and he never calls the backup dog squad. Why? No answer is given. Why he never called the backup dog squad in advance when you were on level 4 alert, and that was the SOP. Now, in level 4 alert, Indian Airlines is supposed to, SOP called for hand check of luggage. Not all of luggage, but randomly. This security officer said no hand checking is required. And then mysteriously, just 15 minutes before this luggage was to be X-ray scanned, 75% of the bags have already been scanned. Only this bag is to come. 25% is left, and this bag is part of the 25%. Just minutes before this bag was to be X-ray scanned, the X-ray machine mysteriously stopped working. Later on, when the technician, and then once they stopped working, D'Souza ordered not D'Souza ordered, but the security temporaries, they had this agency they had hired, local agency, which is like a temporary security staff who used to check bags. They knew that they have to use handheld sniffers. So they started using handheld sniffers. Those sniffers basically sense fumes from the bombs. And then when they started scanning, just before this particular burgundy bag was to be scanned, the security officer basically pulled in like an angry way, the sniffer from the hand of the the security agent who was scanning bags and said it, you are doing it totally wrong. You have no idea how to use the scanner. And he said, okay, teach me. So then he basically takes a matchstick and takes the matchstick very close to the scanner, and the scanner starts making a whistling noise, which is what has happened. What happens is, if you have the matchstick which is away and the fumes are far away, you will hear beeps. The beeps will keep getting stronger as the fumes get closer to the scanner. So he took the matchstick next to the scanner, and the scanner made a whistling noise. And he basically said, this is the type of noise that will come in, which will tell when you have to basically kick out the bag. If the whistling noise is not there, then you don't have to worry. It was a wrong demonstration, because you will never get a whistling noise, because your scanner will always get a beep, because the bomb is always slightly away from the your scanner. You are not touching the bomb exactly with the scanner, so you get loud beeps, not a whistling noise. So he basically gave the wrong demonstration, and then the security agent said, I particularly remember that burgundy bag. When I scanned it, the scanner beeped. So I scanned it again, the scanner again beeped. But I looked up to the security officer, and because he had given me this demonstration, I had to let the bag through. So then this is how the bag got through into the aircraft at Toronto. And the thing does not stop here. This role of the security officer. This security officer then boards that same aircraft, because that aircraft is supposed to go from Toronto to Montreal. He also goes onto that aircraft. Okay, while all this is happening in Toronto, in Montreal, the other passengers who are supposed to board the aircraft, they are checking in with their bags. In Montreal, at around 7 p.m., 2 suspicious bags are identified by the Air India staff. Now, because Air India staff has identified 2 suspicious bags in Montreal, they are supposed to immediately call RCMP and tell RCMP 2 suspicious bags are identified. Air India refuses to inform RCMP. And Air Canada staff, who is the next counter, they notice that these 2 strange bags are taken out. And they call Air India desk and tell them, please call RCMP at 8 p.m. Air India still does not call. They call at 9 p.m. and tell, please call RCMP. Air India again does not call RCMP. So at 10 p.m., the Air Canada staff, on their own violation, call the RCMP and tell them that Air India has 2 suspicious bags. Please do something. These guys are not informing you. So when that call happened at 10 p.m., RCMP immediately calls for the backup dog squad, because their dog squad is also gone for training. So they call the backup dog squad, which is around 45 minutes away. In the interim, this flight has landed from Toronto at Montreal. And the moment this flight lands, this Air India security officer starts fighting with the RCMP and the airport management that we cannot wait for the backup dog squad, because we are losing thousands of dollars of money. Aircraft is already late. And he basically forces them to not wait for that backup dog squad, which is probably half an hour away. And because once the dog had come, the dog would have had to sniff all the bags and inside of the aircraft. He basically forces the aircraft to take off. And then at this time, he is not on the aircraft. He is now on the aircraft. Okay. He makes that executive decision after fighting there. And all this is documented in the John Major inquiry. And all those things are in part of my presentation. If you go to the slides, I have given references, and I'll share the slide with you. And then again, the another question is, even Montreal is at level 4. So why was the backup dog squad already not at the airport? It should have been there already. But even when they called it by luck.
Many things.
Sorry?
There's too many things.
Yeah. So you see, like this, and this security officer, John D'Souza, was never to be heard and seen again after this. He vanishes. Nobody knows where he's gone. Like Surinder Malik and like Devinder Ahluwalia, the Indian Consul General and their officers. Okay. Yeah, sorry about a small interruption. So this is how the the bag actually ended up. The bomb actually ended up on the, assuming it was a bomb, actually ended up on the aircraft, and the aircraft took off without the passenger. It would not have been possible if the so-called security officer had not deliberately made these decisions and steps. It was impossible for a bomb to get on the aircraft and the aircraft to fly without the passenger and just the bag. Okay, another thing, very mysterious things happened. When this aircraft was actually at Toronto, they also loaded an engine, extra engine on it. It was a malfunctioning engine, but it need to be transported back to India. So the usual practice is that the engine is kind of tied to the wing of an existing aircraft because it's too big to go into the belly. So they tied another non-functional engine to the wing of the aircraft. When the aircraft was just short of Irish ATC airspace, at 30,000, it flew at 30,000 feet because generally aircraft flew at 33 to 35, but because of the extra weight, it could only fly at 30,000 feet. It makes a ATC call to the ATC that Air India 182 entering your airspace. That is very normal. They make that call, and after that call, they just vanish from the radar and from the radio telephony. The black box was found. Then the black box was found. Basically, it fell down like a leaf suddenly, and then everybody perished. And there's a horrific stories on like the how the condition of the bodies, but also heroic stories of humanity or people who risked their life, every ship who was around it, and how they risked their life to recover as many bodies. 260 bodies were recovered out of 329. That's not a small ask. The ship, young boys from ships, local Irish fishermen, they jumped in that ice cold water to recover each and every body, and they meticulously saved the body. Then every body, the autopsy was conducted, and then those bodies, their loved ones were called, and those bodies were sent back. Compare that to how India treated the bodies of Sikhs after Operation Blue Star. Just a comparison. Anyways, so this aircraft fell down. Only 5% of the wreckage of the aircraft was taken out of the water. All the wreckage is available there. All the wreckage, 100% of the wreckage can be seen. They took out only 5%, saying that with modern techniques, we don't need like a lot of luggage. We can computer generate what actually happened. Okay, fine. Out of that 5%, half of it India took to Bombay. India said we want to investigate. Half of it the Canadians took back to Canada. Okay, so 2.5% came to Canada. 2.5% of the wreckage went to India. Now there were three teams which did an investigation on what exactly happened, like in terms of on this aircraft, who looked at the wreckage. One is the Indian team, and one Canadian and one American. None of the three teams agree on where the bomb was that exploded. But all the three teams agree on one thing, that there was no explosive residue on any wreckage. So all the three teams agree that we cannot conclusively say that a bomb brought down the aircraft. So what do they agree on? What they agree on is, one team says they say that the American and Canadian team say that some blast took place in the rear of the aircraft. Blast. The blast could be of anything. Blast could be an oxygen cylinder as well. And they say why we say that is because there is a crack in the fuselage which runs from the aft to the forward segment. So there is a blast which took place in the back, which the crack then started going to the front. That is what they said, tell us that some blast took place. Whether it was a bomb or something that was part of the luggage or something else, God knows. But no explosive residue was there on that crack. It was just a crack, which was wider in the aft and narrower in the front. So something must have blasted. So that is why they never said conclusively that a bomb took down the aircraft. They say there is an inference that there could have been some blast in the back which took down the aircraft. Now, these two teams, American and Canadian, they also did not agree where that blast happened. One team is saying right close to the tail, another is saying somewhere in the middle. And they didn't agree. Even in the court case, they fought against each other that this is you are wrong, this is you are wrong. And the Indian team is in a totally different world. They're saying there is a blast which happened under the feet of the pilot. They are in a totally different dimension. Anyways, leave that side. Black box should have given us something. Black box is a very, very sturdy tool made for exactly like these. If a blast happened, it calculates, it monitors every single event that is happening. Surprisingly, black box has nothing. No data After that radio telephony call is made that we are entering airspace, the black ball has totally gone zero. Like there is nothing in the black box, nothing at all. No abnormal, let's say, event is recorded in the black box data. For example, let us say that suddenly the height dropped from 30,000 to this. Nothing. No abnormal malfunctioning of any system is detected in the black box. So how did this aircraft come down? Nobody knows in reality. And how did this black box suddenly become pristine clean and did not capture any data? It was as if, I think they said that, oh, the electricity got cut off to the black box. Really? Really? The black box electricity got cut off? So, yeah. So, but then black box was Indian. Black box was examined by Indian government. So, I don't know, it's how much to trust.
Aviation terrorism is originated by like Indian government is really good at aviation terrorism. Like they always mess with planes, they hijack planes, then people get hired as MPs. Like Sikhs don't really have a history of this kind of stuff, right? They'll just slap you right across the face, right? Like Hawara did. Like
Yeah, it's very it's great that you talk about it. That's a good point, Simran. That reminds me before I forget. So, how did the Canadian CC agents first started, doubting that it is India who did it? What two things? One thing was just after this plane came down, nobody knew like it was a bomb blast or something, because even after all millions of dollars, nobody could say it was a bomb which blasted. Okay, immediately Surinder Malik called up the local newspaper and said a bomb has taken on within 15 hours of the plane coming down. People were still not sure that the aircraft has dropped down. Surinder Malik called up and that a bomb has blown and the aircraft has been dropped down and these were Sikh extremists, and he names the people. Okay, Talwinder Parmar and all these guys, and police is investigating the Sikh extremists, which was a false news, fake news, because police was not doing any such stuff. Police was still confirming what happened. And then Surinder Malik, within 15 hours, shared information that there is some L Singh and M Singh, these are the passengers who booked ticket, they didn't board the aircraft and all that stuff. This information, it took RCMP 6 months to piece together, which Surinder Malik had within 15 hours of the aircraft incident. So this really raised red flags with RCMP and CISIS that if this guy had so much information, why did he not tell us this information in advance? We have intelligence sharing with them. What all does he know? What is his role? And then they figured out, CC figured out that in Madras in 1984, 1 year back in Madras, 1984 or 1983, in Madras, there is a similar incident that happened. Somebody booked a flight, put up these suitcases, baggages, and they had bombs and blah, 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 and all. Exact same sequence of event. And it was blamed by the Indian government on Tamil militants. So, because the modus operandi, the way...
the LTTE.
Yes.
LTTE.
Yes, the Tamil militants. Yeah. Yes. So, they blame it on the Tamil militant. They are Tamilian, basically, the LTTE. So, they blamed it on Tamil militant, but it was the same modus operandi because it was so similar. The way that Madras airport bombing had been done, they knew that it is done by the same person. It can't be a different person. And so they immediately suspected that, oh, what does the Indian government know about all this? Okay, so that is one. Another piece of evidence I'll give you. I don't believe that Rayat made the bomb. Rayat was definitely involved. Rayat bought that transistor and Rayat gave that transistor to that unknown person who's called, the unknown person who was always with the Rayat and Malik, whose name we will never know. Okay, who CCs was tailing, he was never identified, soft target, and has some speculation on who that person was. But anyways, so that person was the one who asked Rayat to bought 2 transistors. And those transistors were the one which blasted. At least in Tokyo, it blasted because in Tokyo we have the residue. It was something in that transistor blasted. Whether it was the same type of bomb which blasted in Air India 1 and 2, we don't know. But in Tokyo, that transistor blasted and there was some explosive substance in it. Now, imagine who was Rayat. Rayat was being approached by Parmar to build, some bombs to go and use in India. Rayat was a lowly mechanic electrician. So the type of bomb he was making. Because they tracked him. CCs were tracking them. So they once went through months before this bombing. They went to this month, days before the bombing. They were testing a bomb in the BC to take to India to blast a bridge. We know what the bomb they made of. he basically took IMR 4350. It's a type of gunpowder. I'll show you. It is there in my stash because I hand load guns. I'll show you the powder. Okay, just hold on. So I have that powder because I use it for my hand loading. Okay, so this is that powder. Okay, just hold on. I have somebody asking me a question. Let me answer that first here, and I'll come. So this is that powder he had. Now this is a different company, but the number is same. Let me take it back if you guys can focus it. 4350. Can you see that? Okay. So this is a normal gunpowder. Okay, this is for, and it is not more explosive than what you get on the firecrackers. And if I just I have to pack it in a very very solid container for it to generate the amount of energy to cause some kind of a blast. So this cannot be this, in a small transistor which is this big. Okay, the transistor was this big. You how much of this gunpowder you can pack up? It can probably not even blast my suitcase properly. What is it? Is it going to take down an aircraft? So this was the gunpowder that Riyadh knew to use. So he basically, when the CISIS tailed him, he was trying to make a bomb using this. What he did was he took a pipe. In the pipe, he put this gunpowder. In that, he put a blasting cap. Blasting cap is used, to blast areas like landmines. He put a blasting cap, and then he bought a 12-volt battery. Okay, and with a 12-volt battery, he basically gave a charge by putting a long wire manually, connected the positive and negative to start a spark in the blasting cap, and it blew. It probably caused blast which is maybe 10 times more harmful than the largest firecracker you would have seen. Okay, that was the level of bomb that Riyadh could build. That was a bomb that CC's agents saw them testing in. CC's agents saw them testing this bomb in the forest in BC, and he laughed. Okay.
And CISIS agents saw him testing the bomb?
Yes, they saw him because they were tailing.
They forgot their cameras.
That's when they forgot the cameras. Okay.
A
So
CISIS agent forgot their cameras.
oh yeah, that's fine. That happens, okay, all the time. So because they were like, that CC agent was probably bored because he realized like these guys don't know nothing. These are jokers. Okay. Like for him, these were jokers. If I were the CC agent, I would be laughing.
For digging and you forget to take your, what do we use to dig? Wow, my brain.
No, that's fine. But imagine if I were the CC agent, I'd be laughing, okay? Because most of us who are who are familiar with firearms, we know hand loading. We know this is a joke. Like if I give somebody to make a bomb who can only hand load cartridges, this is the type of bomb he will make, and I will laugh. Okay, so this is what he was doing. So obviously, CC agent were probably laughing, and that is why probably they stopped tailing these guys after some time because they realized that these are not a serious, serious some professionals or trained people. They could hardly do anything. They don't even know how to make a bomb. So that is why their actually surveillance of Parmar and Riyadh was stopped in 1985 because there was nothing coming out of it. They were tailing them for months, and because they were testing these kids' bombs to go back to India. So that was the level of training of Riyadh. Now, if somebody is telling me that Riyadh could make that sophisticated bomb which could go into this package and can bring down an aircraft, I don't trust it. To bring down an aircraft is not a small thing. Anybody who is slightly familiar with explosive or aviation, aircraft can take a lot of damage. So whatever bomb or mechanism that brought that aircraft down, if it was a bomb, it had to be a really, really powerful bomb. You can go and Google. Many times there are bombs have blasted in an aircraft and the whole aircraft has a huge hole in the fuselage, and even then it can land. That has happened not once, multiple times. So it's not that easy to take down an aircraft, and especially when you don't even damage the area of the wing and the engines. And and then suddenly vanish without any trace on black box. So it is a mystery, actually, even today, for all the flight investigators. Nobody can today tell you what exactly how that aircraft came down. Nobody has signed on that, and it's a big mystery. It has to be investigated further, and it's a It's a sham that they have not investigated.
It's a sham. It's a sham. I realized I was trying to say shovel, guys. Like,
Yeah.
imagine I have to go dig a hole and I'm like, oops, I forgot my shovel. Like, how do you forget your key, like, toolkit on your job? Like, why would you even leave the house and surveil terrorists, quote unquote, without a camera? Like,
No,
that
no,
makes
no,
no
no,
sense.
no, no, no. That's fine. Like what happened. Like they look when these guys were. That's again a red herring, Simran. Look, when these guys, Parmar and Rayat, were being tailed, okay, they were not serious terrorists. They were jokers in the eyes of the CC agent. They were just going around. Imagine, like, their guy is going around and blasting this kind of a bomb. The CC agent basically said he basically laughed when he saw that what these guys were trying. And if he having not taken a camera along, that job on that day is not a big deal. But that doesn't matter. Even if the camera was not taken, we know the people who were there. So he has said it is Parmar, it was the Rayat who were trying that. But again, like, that is irrelevant detail. The problem is that who was the guy who prepared that bomb then? Rayat just bought the transistor. He didn't knew. He said, I gave it to this guy. Who are these people who took that transistor and packed a powerful bomb in it? What was the explosive substance he used? The explosive substance that was found in the Tokyo blast, they have not been able to figure out what type of explosive it is. They have not been able to figure out. That is the level of sophistication on that explosive substance. They were not able to chemically trace it to any dynamite or other type of explosive that you normally find in Canada. So where did that explosive come from? These bunch of jokers who were running around with IMR 4350 gunpowder, they got that? What was that explosive substance? So how did they, to make a bomb? It's not easy, okay? You have to time it, then put a timer on a bomb. Who knows? Like, Parmar was a farmer. Who gave him this training? Even if he had such a training. So this is like like we are being sold this cock and bull story by people like Terry, while they are trying to hide the real evidence. The real evidence is that it was a sophisticated terror attack planned by the Indian government agencies, no less than the investigators who actually investigated this entire incident have openly come out and claimed it so. What else do you want? And they have laid out the evidence. They have linked the main financer, Ripudaman Malik, the money trail, how it came from the Indian government, how he was financing people, how he financed Babar Khalsa, how he controlled all these foot soldiers. We have witnesses who have said how Malik actually basically booked the tickets, how Malik used these people to put the baggage on the aircraft. We have witnesses who have confirmed it no less in a court of law. What else do we need to know who did it? It is just a fact that people are not bringing that evidence out and not talking, and our media is lazy, super lazy. But I'm surprised today, like, I'm happy as well. While I'm talking, I see almost 1,800 people on live stream. I have never seen so many people join into my live stream, never, which is great. And please retweet this space.
You're going to get a lot of benefit from talking about this in English because
Yeah.
talking about it Punjabi is way better. Obviously, Punjabi, like the words that we say and like the power that comes behind having like that Punjabi connection and discussing the story, it's important. But this is a diaspora issue, right? Like when we go back to the kids thing that I mentioned, what do we want our kids to read in history books? Not just sick kids, but every kid in Canada should not have lies told to them, right? Like we've already done that with other communities in Canada and then we had to correct. So in like 15 years, I don't want apology statements. Like, no, thank you. Let's just, work on it now.
Yeah. And I'll show
So
you.
please do more.
Yeah. No, thank you. Thank you for the encouragement. Let me show you some other excerpts of people who are on live stream now that you guys are. Okay. So why stop the hand search for this flight? This specific flight, the Indian security officer has laid down, he basically stopped the hand search while the airport was on the highest possible alert. And we knew that this is the anniversary of Operation Blue Star and there's going to be some terror attack or something. This security officer basically this is why I was saying that he specifically asked. This is where this is where they have said in the John Major Commission report that The policy was to hand search, and it was not that they were never used that policy. They had actually been hand searching baggages in the past whenever they went on this level 4 alert. But only for this flight, this so-called John D'Souza, the Indian Air Force security officer, Indian Airline security officer, he basically specifically directed them not to hand search, while also knowing that the X-ray machine has died down. Amazing. So all these excerpts I have given, and this is the excerpt from the court's judgment on the misleading demonstration, which was given to the Burns. Burns is the security agency. Indian Airline had hired their security staff by this Air India security officer, and how that allowed the bomb bag to actually pass through security check. And then this is where I said,
woman for both of the planes, the same woman was the counter baggage checking
yes,
agent.
yeah, same. So the agent who checked in the bag for both the aircrafts was the same agent, and at Vancouver, and that is also very unique. She usually, the agent who checks in the bag, yeah, that's fine, but it could happen. She was called in temporarily because the other agent was on leave, but that's important. Okay. This is where, when I said in Mirabel, the aircraft should not have taken off and waited for the backup dog squad to arrive because 2 suspicious bags were found. But this, Air India security officer fought with RCMP and with the staff at the Mirabel airport that no, we cannot wait for more than 10-20 minutes for the backup dog because I am losing a lot of money. And then as I said, the Air India staff themselves did not inform RCMP for 3 hours. If it were not for Air Canada, even then RCMP would have never known this suspicious bag. Ideally, if the Air India staff had informed RCMP the first time they got the bag out, which was their SOP, the dogs would have been there by the time the aircraft landed, and everything would have been checked in no time. But why was the Air India not interested in informing RCMP and bringing the backup dog squad? That is never explained. What else? Yeah, I think. Yeah, this is good enough. Do we have any other person who wants to ask any question? Simran, anything else you want to add? You kind of figured out in this whole thing. Add, and then we can probably start closing.
Like we could close it because we can just come back again and do another one. And this was like an initial introduction and a call out to anybody in the diaspora that wants to discuss this. Like, I know it's very dangerous and there's a lot of people against talking about this. So if somebody's interested, like, reach out to Harjeet. He's done so much research. I've done personal research, and it's a rabbit hole of reading. Like, you read one book and then you're like, because when I read Soft Target, I have something to mention. Can we talk about Kuldeep Singh Samra for like just 2 minutes? So does anybody know Kuldeep Singh Samra?
I'm going to simply say we can just hold on. We'll hold on for next one. We'll do it for other.
I'll put him in my back pocket.
Yeah, yeah.
He's not going anywhere. His story is not going anywhere. So.
Yeah. We'll definitely talk about that story, and we'll talk about all other cases of him.
To add just an emphasis on Canadian youth and what do we want to teach Canadian youth? Do you have nieces and nephews? Do you have kids that go to Canadian schools? Is there a chance that you know what they're teaching or writing in the high school history books? What are they writing that Sikhs are terrorist? And like, are we now telling everybody and their teachers that, hey, this case is still open? It's a cold, dead, unresolved case in Canada. How do we encourage Canadians to get it closed?
Sorry, I got distracted. People got.
That's okay. You've heard me before. I think you know where I stand.
Yeah.
You can ignore me.
Yeah.
Does anybody else? I think And the Truth or Sarblo is also on speaker. Do you guys have anything to ask?
Yeah, you know what? I just wanted to ask Hardeep if maybe he'd be interested or like would want to try and set up like a thing with Terry, because that guy's kind of an asshole. And,
No, man. Fuck Terry. Like, we already did that years ago. Terry's an idiot.
yeah.
I invite Terry all the time. He's welcome. He's never taken the invitation.
okay.
Yeah, I
He
have.
only takes the invitation if you're a true novelty, and he thinks he can finesse you,
No,
right?
no, no, no. He's dead scared. I have invited him like not once, twice. Every space I invite, I have done probably more than 10 spaces on Air India, and I've invited him every time, and he's just dead scared. He just doesn't come. Like he just wants to be like keep spreading. He knows he will never come, okay, because he knows he can only fool people who have not read the judgment fully or not read the John Major Inquiry Commission. And because people have not read it, they'll have to just gulp up whatever he has read, and he's only selectively taking figures out. That's why he's never come. People have been tagging him left, right, center since I started this space. I'm sitting here waiting for him, and he might be in the anonymous listeners, okay. I'm pretty sure. And he might be he might be sitting there in the anonymous listener, okay. And if he's sitting there, he's the lowest scum on this earth, okay. What a bloody coward. And what a bloody dog is has more self-respect. And then
You're a coward, Terry.
yeah. So and then so he can't come and because he knows that now there is this person who has actually read and seen the evidence, and now he cannot basically come and talk about it. He can only go and pander nonsense and disinformation to people who are willing to already kind of dispose towards just taking fake propaganda. So he has not answered, and leave alone that, I have basically put a 39 tweet thread and challenge him to debunk one of the tweets as incorrect, any evidence that I have shared as incorrect. And all he does is dance around the bush, but never challenges the evidence. He'll just keep going song and dance, Parmar, this, that, this, but never challenge. He's not been able to disapprove a single tweet or evidence I have shared till date. And I encourage everybody to go and look at that 39 tweet thread I have put. And while that is on, as a wrap up, and if there's somebody else wants to do, they can come in. I'm going to quickly share the timeline again on my screen for people who might have joined in late. I'm going to recap certain key elements, okay, for 10-15 minutes, because some of you might have joined late and they might not seen the whole presentation. So this is that that fail flight which actually took off from Toronto to Montreal and from Montreal towards London, and it fell down just before the Irish airspace. I'm talking about the screenshot that I'm sharing on live stream, and Twitter space people probably can't see it, but I have this slide deck going there. So what happened was that somebody checked in a bag with a bomb at Vancouver, which a CP Airways flight took to Toronto. That passenger never boarded that aircraft, but that bag with the bomb came to Toronto. From there, it went to Montreal, the bag with the aircraft, and then the aircraft came down somewhere before the Irish airspace. This happened on 23rd of June, 1985, and so it allowed this bombing. This is the most costliest investigation ever done in the history of humanity into any air crash. And so what does that investigation relieve? We should hear and listen to the investigators who actually did the investigation, not Terry Miluski. Okay, we have to listen to the investigators. What are they saying? This is a book written by Juno Katsua. He is the Asia Pacific Bureau Chief for CSIS, and he has a full chapter on Air India 182, where he details out how the Indian government agents actually conducted this atrocity and terror act, and why they had in Canada buried the Indian government hand and just blamed some low level foot soldiers who happened to be Sikhs, and how India got away with it. There's a whole chapter on it. The book is called Nest of Spies. I think it was written 2012 or 2007. I'm kind of just confusing the dates. I encourage everybody to buy that book. It's available on Kindle. Anywhere you can go and read that chapter on your own. Listen to people who have done the investigation, not sold out journalists. So I'm going to just quote his quote, because he summarized it very well. He said, Flight 182 isn't just a tragedy. It is also a Pandora's box with the leaden weight of Canada's entire governmental apparatus still sitting on the lid and trying to keep it shut. Concealed inside, apart from the murderers, is the dark history of India itself, in the form of steely-eyed agents bent on settling New Delhi's accounts and prepared to cross anybody's borders in order to do so. How would Canadians feel if it were known that India's agents provocateurs had pulled just one tiny thread in making this disaster come about? Or at least had known that it was going to happen and chosen to stand aside? What might Canadians do if they discovered that our authorities had tolerated foreign interference that was bound to spill quantities of blood for no other reason than to ensure the continued prosperity of corporate interest and the untroubled afternoon teas of our diplomats? And then the whole chapter basically talks about this is some newspaper cuttings. Immediately once that aircraft came down, investigators figured out the Indian hand, the Indian agency hand, and they basically started talking to the media. So every media, had reports of investigators telling them how Indian government was behind this bombing. These are, you can see these, you can read these reports. So you can Google search them on your own if you have to. I'm not going to read these reports. They're plenty, they're pretty clean. Then there are some direct quotes from some CC's investigators who were directly involved in that investigation. Most of these quotes are given by multiple articles that Globe and Mail published. They had a 3-part series, then a 5-part series. The two of their top journalists also wrote a book. I highly recommend you guys read that book as well, because it has all the evidence on how the conspiracy was laid out, and not just claims, evidence from the investigators themselves, the investigators who investigated the crash, CC's officials. And these are some of their quotes. So convinced had CC's become of the Government of India connection that at one Air India task force meeting, a CC's agent had seriously suggested that if you really want to clear the incidents quickly, take vans down to the Indian High Commission and the consulates in Toronto and Vancouver. Load up everybody and take them down for questioning. We know it and they know it. They are involved. I'll just give some of the quotes from those investigators. At about the time the RCMP was making its November arrests, two senior CSIS officials in BC described at a CSIS meeting their version of a criminal flow chart on Sikh violence in Canada. At the very top, they placed the Government of India, and in brackets beside it, the Secret Service Bureau, CBI, RAW, Third Agency. Below Government of India were the names of Indian agents of influence and agent provocateurs. Below these were the supporters of the Babar Khalsa, many of them suspects in the two bombings. CC's agents believed that the RCMP task force was setting its sights too low in the investigation. So these are what same officials, what they talked about. There is a leaked memo of Gary Bass, who was the head of the RCMP task force on Kanishka bombing. This leaked memo got published in 1990, as part of the John Major inquiry. This got leaked out, in which Gary Bass is caught telling his agents or his boss, hey, we are really worried. There is so much evidence of India coming out that we might have to tap the Government of India and RAW agents what to do about it, because we don't want this. These implications, this will impact our relationships with India. Here is the speech that Honorable Andreas Towns, the congressman from New York, gave on 31st October 2000. On the floor of the House in Congress in US. The very, and he no unequivocal term. He even named his speech as the real culprit in Air India bombing is the Indian government. It's a 2-page speech. You guys can Google it. Just Google this title and you will find it in the congressional records. And on the same day, it was not just him. 21 other congressmen signed a letter to the US government asking for US government to declare India a terrorist state for its involvement in Air India Kanishka bombing, as well as multiple other terror attacks within and outside India. This is the overall timeline I have built of the events, because this is a long case with the 2 court cases and 1 public inquiry. But I would like to just kind of, I'll walk you guys through the timeline. But before I do that, Sarblo had his hand raised. Sarblo, go ahead.
Hi, Vijay. I just wanted to step back to the evidence that there wasn't like a lot of explosives in the planes. What does that mean? Like, as in, like, for like what caused the plane to be taken down then, if it wasn't explosives in the luggage?
So when you say there was not a lot, I'm saying there was no trace of any explosive. Not a lot.
Right,
There was zero trace of any explosive in the Air India Kanishka, the flight in which 329. Now, so that's a mystery. So that is why when Terry Milewski shared that, he deleted that line out of it, edited it out. When the investigator said, we only have a strong inference, we cannot conclusively say that a bomb brought down the aircraft. And So yeah, that's a mistake. And they only took out 5% of the wreckage. Okay, they could have taken out 50% of the wreckage to figure out what explosive was used, if it was used. And only after 5%, 2.5% India took, 2.5% came to Canada. And so yeah, there's no like way to say that a bomb brought down that aircraft. Actually, the most convincing theory that I have seen, and somebody, I don't know how that person got an email thread. He forwarded me an email thread which has probably 300 emails inside one thread. And that email thread is between one of the top investigators in air crash investigation in US today. He's considered like the fatherhead, and which he is basically hypothesizing that for him, the most strongest hypothesis is that, this Air India 182 flight, this Kanishka aircraft, it was a unique aircraft. It was loaded from the front. Its front used to open up like this, and you can load luggage from the front as well as back. So the whole cockpit used to kind of rotate up like this. So his hypothesis was there was no bomb. It was a hinge failure. The hinges which kind of held that front end up kind of suddenly failed, dropping the entire nose of that aircraft down. That was his hypothesis. And he was saying that is why you don't see anything in black box. Now, how did suddenly the hinges fail? God knows. And yeah, so there are a lot that is hidden in this thing. Just one sec, I have to just answer a question. Just give me- okay. So that is what. So there is no like kind of like as I said, no conclusive. Like there were three investigation teams: one Indian, one Canadian, one American, and all three of them have different conclusions on what might have happened. But nobody have said conclusively this is what brought down the plane. That is the only agreement between them, that they don't know.
What was the what was used in the bomb that was in the Japanese airport then?
Yeah, that's a good question. A very good question. So this is what happened. The Japanese airport, the bomb that was used, the chemical composition of that bomb, they were not able to understand what is that explosive. Their only thing is this is some super high military grade, sophisticated, ultra thing explosive which nobody knows about. The chemical composition of that bomb did not match anything that is usually available in the North American, the usual things like dynamite and all that we use. It did not match it. So they were never able to figure out what was it that blasted at the Tokyo airport. And the inference was it was some military grade explosive which only the militaries have, and so that composition is not known to the civilian world.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's how crazy that I said this is an open case. Okay, this is an open case. Like if you have three different investigators coming out and telling you this is a government operation by India, like I don't know, like what else we need. We have witnesses coming out telling this is a guy who did it, and that guy can be clearly linked to government of India with the money coming from directly from government of India. What else is a close and shut case? I don't know.
Yeah, and I think this case is only coming up again so much because of Niger's death. So if they're going to kill Canadian 6 on Canadian soil, then we're going to dig up every little last detail about why foreign interference even exists, how transnational violence even started. This all started prior to the bombing. So this is going, we can go back to the 1970s on this. We have Jagjit Singh Chauhan getting tailed by 15 intelligence agents when he comes into, North America for the first time. This is not the first time we're hearing this. So very important case.
Yeah. So on that, the bomb question, right? So as I said, like it was the agreement was that it was some kind of a military grade explosive in the Tokyo bomb, and I don't think even in my worst dreams you can trade a guy like Riyadh in next 30 years to create that kind of a bomb. Okay, you look at him, and he's a lowly mechanic, electrician. Sorry, and he was trying to put like gunpowder in a tube and blast it with a 12-volt battery. Okay, imagine that. Imagine that, and then compare it to the bomb that was blasted in Tokyo. Like, the Mr. Riyadh will need a new janam, okay, new birth to be able to make that. In that body, he cannot make with that brain. Anyways, um, so that is the cock and bull.
Bomb making experts and aviation terrorists, and everybody thinks it was Rayat and Parmar that did it. It's interesting.
No, it's just there's somebody else there. So the most mysterious character in this entire thing is that one person who actually asked Riyadh to buy the transistors in which that Tokyo bomb blasted. That guy was never identified, and that guy was always with Riyadh, and he was there with Riyadh buying. Those transistors were not bought together; they were bought at separate times from the same shop, and the same shopkeeper confirmed that both the times this was this guy whom he also didn't know. Young looking guy, tall, smart, and wearing a turban, and never identified. And nobody identified, who are the guy who checked in the luggage, that clean shaven guy. Who was that guy who actually picked up the tickets? The guy with the netted beard, the military looking guy.
That's one thing was
And nobody ever kind of figured out where John D'Souza went, the security officer who basically made the bombs board the aircraft. Where is Surinder Malik? Imagine, like, Surinder Malik was the Consul General of India. He is vanished in thin air. Somebody was telling me, I won't name that gentleman. That gentleman is of some repute within, let's say, West. A guy who is of repute. He told me that he tried to check with contacts in India. Nobody gave him a straight answer. In fact, when he inquired a bit more, they started, kind of giving him hints that his visa might be revoked. So there is where is Surinder Malik? Why is the Indian government hiding him? Where is that Devinder Ahluwalia? The other guy, the Surinder Malik and Devinder Ahluwalia were the main guys who were running this entire operation. Okay. M.K. Dhar, who was one of the diplomats who was expelled as part of the diplomats that were expelled by Canada from India, 4 top diplomats in 1986 after this bombing. And he was also an intelligence guy. He was a spy. He retired from the second highest post that a spy can retire from in India. And he wrote a book, and he also claimed that we did it. In his book, he hints in one line, okay? In his book is called Open Secrets, where he talks about the work he did when in Canada and how he was expelled from Canada suddenly with his entire staff. And he says, okay, he talks about the work he did, and he said that his work was primarily to infiltrate the Sikh diaspora community. He used to go to the Gurdwara, Sikh, saying, Gurbani there. He became part of the Sangat. His aim was to infiltrate the diaspora press, and he openly laid out, even his charter that he was given. And then he says that there were these other people, Surinder Malik and party, the other raw team, which crashed the aircraft. That's it, that one line. And then he doesn't talk about that thing. We understandable, he can't totally blame he would have been killed the next day by the Indian state itself. But he gives a very strong hint that it was the RNAWA work of bringing it down. And he basically tried to say that I was not part of it. I was on a different project. And that happens, in the government, these operations, they are on need to know basis. Like, you only know when you are involved, and you never know anything extra. So that is another book that you guys can read. M.K. Dhar's book, Open Secrets. I think that book is a must read, because in that book, the person who has retired from the second highest post of intelligence in India, he is not only talking about one, he gives multiple instances where the Indian government has gone ahead and killed in its own citizens in hundreds, sometimes in thousands, to achieve whatever they feel is their strategic aim. And he clearly lays out, that the Indian regime is as brutal as Idi Amin. That is the comparison he gives. And that is the regime that people like Terry Milewski believe that cannot kill its own citizen. Oh, India would not have done it because India can't do it. It's such a nice regime. It's such a nice country with human rights for everyone, freedom of speech, freedom of religion. Look how nice our India regime is. That is the kind of bullshit he propagates.
And I heard that MK Dar's son only released the book about the open secrets because India tried to kill him or something. I don't know. Is it true?
That was I don't know, but in the book MK Dhar mentioned that he was never ever in his life. He worked with many Indian militants and insurgents, and he said he was never felt threat for his life from the militants ever. He said the only time his life was he felt his life was that he was there was an attempt to kill him was from his own agency. And he mentioned an incident wherein his wife and kid were traveling and some truck tried to run them over, and they were miraculously saved in that accident. So, and he basically blamed the Indian agency for doing it because they had started doubting his, he was a man. He said I was a man with a bit of a conscience. So that was the problem. And there was one person who I don't know him much. He is supposedly was involved in the Sikh struggle in Punjab. He also spoke highly of Dhar. Dhar was one camp, Dogal was another camp, and probably Dhar was a person who was a bit more sincere and trying to find a resolution to the Sikh issue. I don't know how true that is, but this is somebody's statement. I thought it's important to just lay it out. While we are at it, I will probably, I think we have done enough. I think we'll probably just.
Can I ask you one more question?
Yeah,
I'm
Simon,
sorry.
go ahead.
Wasn't there a Polish spy? A Polish. Did we talk about that already, or am I just?
Yeah, David Kilgore. Yeah, but that's going to just be a very different topic. It's a different.
Right.
Yeah, we'll talk about it. Yeah. Okay, guys. I think we've spent enough time today to go through this. This is an important. Important. I don't know what I should call this. It's not an event. It's a
The
travesty.
beginning of an end.
Yeah. The like.
The diaspora fights back.
Yeah. No, that's fine.
Skeletons coming out of the closet of Canada.
Yeah.
And India.
No, that's fine. But it is the fact. At the end of the day, it's a very, very sad tragedy. It's a sad tragedy. There are 329 people who lost their lives, plus 2 Tokyo baggage handlers. They are not, imagine some of them were kids. Some of them were they were pregnant ladies on board that aircraft. And there are people in this world who exist today who, quote unquote, do these kind of acts under the name of national security. All these CBI, RNAW officers, intelligence bureau officers who masterminded this, killed 329 own people with the name of defaming the Sikhs. They were justifying themselves, saying they're doing it for a national cause, a cause that is bigger than them, a cause for the Indian flag. I think it is the moment if they ever, half of them will listen to this thing. Okay, half of the people, many of those more listeners I will get will be from these agencies. So you should think as a human being. Stop thinking like a robot and a slave of a state. They were all justifying themselves. They thought that they were doing a good deal to kind of, it's okay to use these Sikhs to bomb this aircraft and we will blame them later on. It's okay. That's what they thought. But it's not okay. If we have to build a human society, it is not okay. And, even right now, if you are, somebody who is serving, who knows something about this, bring that out. We have enough evidence. We don't need more evidence. There is no need for extra evidence here. But if you know something about it, you should talk about it. At least you should talk about, hey, this was done wrong. This was a wrong thing. And under this false nationalistic cause, the Indian government did it. It is important to get the truth out so that we don't have these kind of events happen again. Otherwise, new people would have replaced Surinder Malik's and Devinder Ahluwalia's. If Surinder Malik's and Devinder Ahluwalia's and the government of India is not shamed for this act, then what is the example we are setting for the new Surinder Malik's? They will feel that this is the right act to do. They will do more such acts. What does it mean for our future? Like, I think people should think about it.
Well, I think somebody reported Coin or someone was sharing that they're already in like the whole upper echelons of our North American society. They're in like some of the best jobs. They're already influencing that. Even party leaders they've been influencing in Canadian politics. But yeah, great question.
Yeah. So that is, so the people who are, like, I urge anybody, whether they are working in Indian intelligence, Indian security forces, who are from that subcontinent, or any Canadian or any right thinking individual, you should think like, it is important to tell the truth on this. I have shared all the evidences available. It is important to talk about how Indian government did it, what is their role, so that we don't have a repetition. If we don't do it, if we keep pandering to the fake propaganda, oh, Sikhs did it, Sikhs were the extremists. If we keep pandering that fake propaganda, I can tell you the new Surinder Maliks, the new government of India raw agents will repeat this act, and while thinking that they are doing something great for their country.
Oh yeah,
So
definitely something like
so
this.
it is important. It's important that we kind of get this evidence out, and it is important for everybody to get knowledgeable on this, to get this evidence out, and to make sure that we don't have such a repetition. With those words, I thank everybody who has spent the time here today, and Maharaj de upar ardas karte hain that finally the truth will be out and justice will be given to those 329 innocent souls, and the truth will be told to the world. With that, Maharaj da naam lende hoye, ਨਾਨਕ ਨਾਮ ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ ਤੇਰੇ ਭਾਣੇ ਸਰਬੱਤ ਦਾ ਭਲਾ। ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ।
Where did it come from? Where did you get it?